Chapter 2400. The waiter and the surrounding guests were all dumbfounded. Because before, they didn't see how Qin Feiyang rushed in front of Xiao Yunwen. In other words, this person's speed was so fast that they couldn't catch him. But speed was only the second. What shocked them the most was Qin Feiyang's courage. The Xiao family's master was standing next to him. And he still dared to be so arrogant? And you need to be taught a lesson too. Qin Feiyang turned to look at the blue-clothed young man, and took a step forward. The blue-clothed young man panicked, and was about to hide behind his friend at the table. But before he could take a step, Qin Feiyang landed in front of him like a ghost. He raised his hand and slapped him hard. Slap. Another loud slap rang out. Both the blue-clothed young man and Xiao Yunwen had half of their faces immediately swollen, and there was a striking palm print on both of their faces. When everyone came back to their senses, Qin Feiyang had returned to the tea table and was drinking tea calmly. Master, this person is not simple. Be careful. A guard walked to the Xiao family's master and looked at Qin Feiyang vigilantly and whispered, So what if he's not simple? I was worried that I wouldn't have a chance to please the dragon's messenger. But I didn't expect this person to come to me immediately. The Xiao family's master sneered. Master, what do you mean? Capture this person and hand him over to the dragon's messenger? The guard was surprised. Yes, this person despises the dragons. After handing him over to the dragon's messenger, the messenger will definitely look at me with new eyes. Coupled with my brother's relationship, the position of the Blackstone City's governor will be mine. The Xiao family's master smiled proudly. I see. Master, you're really smart. The guard's face was full of admiration. You don't have to worry about anything else. Just protect Yunwen. The Xiao family's master secretly told the group of guards, and then continued to walk toward Qin Feiyang. Father, you must kill him. Xiao Yunwen roared as if she had gone crazy. He had never suffered such humiliation in his entire life. Today's slap would definitely make him a laughingstock in the future. It would become a shame that he would never be able to wash away. This bastard should be cut into pieces. The blue-clothed youth also glared at Qin Feiyang with resentment. The head of the Xiao family walked to Qin Feiyang's table without saying a word. Then he sat across from Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. He picked up the teapot and poured a cup. He extended his hand and said, Please. The Xiao family's patriarch picked up the teacup and poured the tea into his mouth. Xiao family head, don't drink. That's the teacup that the big dog drank from. The blue-clothed young man hurriedly exclaimed. Although the big black wolf didn't like drinking tea, it was too bored earlier and drank a little. However, the blue-clothed young man's warning was too late. Just like that, a cup of tea entered his stomach. The Xiao family's master's stomach churned uncontrollably, and a monstrous aura instantly rose from within his body. Crack! The teacup in his hand shattered into pieces. The Xiao family's master stared at Qin Feiyang coldly and said word by word, Little bastard, you really don't know what's good for you. The ancients said that all living things are equal. The big dog is also a living thing. Moreover, it's not sick. What's wrong with drinking from a teacup that it used? Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. The Xiao family's master slammed his palm on the table and stood up abruptly. His sharp gaze was like a blade. Besides, aren't the dragons also ferocious beasts? Aren't you also licking your face and sucking up to them? Qin Feiyang smiled again. This person really has the guts of a leopard. He actually dares to look down on the dragons. Even saying that the dragons are ferocious beasts? Dragons are divine dragons, divine beasts. How can a lowly ferocious beast compare to them? A few young men roared with righteous indignation. Qin Feiyang glanced at them and shook his head. It seems that you've been kneeling for too long. You can't stand up anymore. Impudent. Impudent. How impudent. Follow this master to the city lord mansion immediately and apologize to the dragon's messenger. The Xiao family's master roared, but he was happy in his heart. The more arrogant this person was, the greater his credit would be. Qin Feiyang was slightly stunned and said in surprise, The dragon's messenger has arrived? No. Just before this master came to find you, the dragon's messenger had already arrived in our Blackstone city. He's now handling the affairs in the city lord mansion. If you know what's good for you, you might still have a way out. But if you dare to resist, this master can tell you responsibly that this will definitely be your burial ground. The Xiao family's master laughed sinisterly. You're here so soon? This dragon's efficiency is quite fast. Qin Feiyang muttered. What's wrong? Scared. Unfortunately, it's too late. The Xiao family's master sneered. Scared? Qin Feiyang laughed. As he drank, he said, I'll also responsibly tell you something. If you don't get lost, you won't be able to leave today. Haha. Is this person crazy? Who does he think he's talking to? Not only the surrounding guests, but even the Xiao family's guards laughed. Although he was fast, his cultivation was in front of them. An ant-like low-tier war god dared to challenge a consummate god monarch? It seemed that this person was not only crazy, but also a little stupid. The Xiao family's master couldn't help but laugh. He had never seen such a stupid person. Since you don't know what's good for you, then I can only take action. The Xiao family's master laughed, raised his arm, and grabbed Qin Feiyang. He looked full of confidence. Arrogant. I'm afraid he doesn't even have the courage to resist now. He can only show off in front of us. The blue-clothed young man and the others looked at Qin Feiyang, who was sitting motionlessly on the chair, and sneered. They could already predict this person's outcome. Xiao Yunwen's eyes were also filled with coldness. Just you wait. When you go to the city lord's mansion, you'll have a good time. No. Before going to the city lord's mansion, I'll let you have a taste of what it means to live a life worse than death. Pa. But suddenly, a deafening blast could be heard all of a sudden. The next moment, everyone present widened their eyes in anger and disbelief. The Xiao family's master was the same. He stared intently at his wrist. He saw a big hand grabbing his wrist. The owner of the big hand was Qin Feiyang. However, Qin Feiyang didn't raise his head from the beginning to the end. He was still leisurely drinking tea. The Xiao family's master struggled hard. However, he was shocked to find that the other party's strength was actually above his, and he couldn't break free. How was this possible? The strength of a low-level war god couldn't be so great. Could it be he was hiding his cultivation? When he thought of this, the Xiao family's master felt like he was struck by lightning. If he was really hiding his cultivation, then with such strength, this person's cultivation must be above his. He was a consummate monarch god. Above him, wouldn't it be a half-step god? How could this be? He's actually a half-step god. The Xiao family's master suddenly regretted it. But suddenly, he thought of the dragon's emissary again and said in a deep voice, Your Excellency, although you're a half-step god, compared to the emissary of the dragons, you're not even an ant. I advise you to let go immediately and follow me obediently. What? He's a half-step god. Hearing the Xiao family's master's words, the entire tea house immediately became restless. For example, the blue-clothed young man and Xiao Yunwen no longer had the arrogance from before. Their faces were full of fear. Why would a half-step god pretend to be a low-level war god? Was it fun to pretend to be a pig to eat a tiger? The dragon's emissary, Qin Feiyang murmured. His face was still expressionless. However, his hand began to exert force. The Xiao family's master's face suddenly twisted, and he felt that his wrist was about to break. It wasn't a feeling. It was real. The next moment, with a crisp crack, the Xiao family's master's wrist shattered on the spot, and flesh and blood splattered everywhere. Qin Feiyang also finally let go of his hand. The Xiao family's master hurriedly retreated. The intense pain made him howl nonstop. So strong. When the blue-clothed young man and the others saw this scene, they couldn't help but begin to retreat in horror. It was also at this moment Qin Feiyang finally raised his head, put down the teacup, and looked at the Xiao family's master. He said, Who told you that I'm a half-step god? After breaking through to the great divine lord, it was too easy for him to kill a perfect divine lord with the strength of his physical body. If you're not a half-step god, how can your strength be stronger than mine? The Xiao family's master said angrily. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly and didn't explain. Whoosh. At this moment, a guard hurriedly ran into the tea house. His face was full of anxiety, glancing at the messy hall. The guard immediately ran up when he saw the Xiao family's master. Master, what's the matter with you? The guard exclaimed in shock when he saw the bleeding wrist. The Xiao family's master looked at Qin Feiyang resentfully and didn't explain. He asked suspiciously, "What are you doing here?" Only then did the guard remember the important matter. He exclaimed, "Master, bad news. Our treasure vault, medicine field, spirit vein, and crystal vein have all been robbed." "What?" The Xiao family's master's expression changed. Xiao Yunwen and the group of guards were also shocked. The surrounding crowd, including the waiter, looked at each other in dismay. The Xiao family was robbed? Who is it? How dare they? At the scene, Qin Feiyang was the only one with a smile on his face. Although this big black wolf was usually unreliable, he was quite reliable when it came to doing things. "Who is it?" The Xiao family's master came back to his senses. He raised his other hand, grabbed the guard's clothes and roared, "Tell me, who is it?" The guard said, "It's a big black dog." A big black dog? Everyone was astonished. It was a beast that robbed the Xiao family? Wait, a big black dog? A black dog? Could it be? Suddenly, the shadow of a big black dog appeared in everyone's mind. Then, everyone looked at Qin Feiyang in unison. The Xiao family's master was also stunned. He didn't expect it to be a beast. Then he roared, "How did it know the location of the treasure vault and medicine field?" "It was the butler who brought it there. But the butler was forced to do it. Now he has been killed by that beast. And its cultivation is very terrifying. It's a half-step god," the guard said with a face full of fear. Chapter 2401. What? The big black dog that's half a step away from the god realm? Could it be? Everyone was shocked and looked at Qin Feiyang again. Fear was written all over their faces. If it was really the big dog from before, this man and the dog were not to be trifled with. Woof! All of a sudden, a dog barked at the door. Everyone reflexively turned around and saw a big black dog standing at the door, shaking its head. "That's it." The guard pointed at the big black wolf and roared, "It's true." Hearing this, everyone hurriedly retreated in horror. They thought that it left because it was afraid of the Xiao family's revenge, but it turned out to rob the Xiao family. "What are you talking about?" The big black wolf walked in suspiciously. "Why are you pretending? I saw you rob the Xiao family and kill our housekeeper with my own eyes." The guard yelled, "Rob the Xiao family? Kill your housekeeper? What's this? Don't talk nonsense." The big black wolf frowned and walked toward Qin Feiyang. The Xiao family master, Xiao Yunwen, and a group of guards who were standing in the aisle stepped aside instinctively. "What are they talking about? Why can't I hear anything?" The big black wolf walked to the tea table and sat opposite Qin Feiyang like a dog, asking suspiciously, "The Xiao family's treasure vault, herb field, spirit vein, and crystal vein were just robbed by a big black dog, so they suspect you." Qin Feiyang smiled. "What the hell? This is slander and frame up. What are you up to? I don't even know where the Xiao family is. How can I rob your treasure vault and herb field? I'm telling you, don't bite people." "No, I'm not a human." "Bite a dog." "No, I'm not a dog either." "In any case, don't slander me and ruin my innocence." The big black wolf glared at the group and said angrily, "It's not him." Everyone looked at each other with suspicion in their eyes. "Stop quibbling. I can recognize you even if you turn into ashes." The guard roared, "Let me tell you, you must take responsibility for your words. In this world, I'm not the only big black dog. Furthermore, I have just become a martial immortal. How can I enter your Xiao family?" Big Black Wolf said with a straight face. The guard took a closer look. He really was a beginner war god. What was going on? Could it really be that it wasn't the same big black dog? Someone said, "Since it's not you, why don't you tell us where you went?" The big black wolf said, "I need to pee. Can I go out and take a piss?" Ugh. Everyone was stunned. "We can't possibly settle it on the spot, right? I don't mind, but you guys will definitely scold me for being uncultured. You hypocrites, I've finally seen it for myself. I can't afford to offend you." The big black wolf's face was full of disdain. Everyone's faces were filled with rage again. The master of the Xiao family looked at Qin Feiyang and the big black wolf with a gloomy expression. He said in a deep voice, "Take a good look again. Is it really him?" The guard looked at the big black wolf with a trace of hesitation. It really looked like him. The size of his body and the color of his fur were exactly the same, but his cultivation was different. Wait! Suddenly, the guard seemed to have noticed something. He opened his eyes wide and roared, "It's him. He has the same aura as that big black dog." Bastard! The master of the Xiao family was furious. Damn it! This bastard really knows how to act. I almost believed him. He's really a bastard. He went to rob the Xiao family for such a small matter. These country bumpkins are really rude. Everyone muttered. Big Black Wolf seemed to be a little angry. He looked at the guard and said angrily, "Can't you shut up? Isn't it hard for me to act?" He admitted it. This damn bastard. Xiao Yunwen roared angrily. She looked at the two guards beside her and shouted, "You two, go to the city lord's mansion and find the dragon's messenger." Yes. The two of them responded and turned to rush outside. Big Black Wolf was about to make a move. Qin Feiyong waved his hand and smiled and said, "There's no need to care about them." Why? Big Black Wolf was suspicious. Qin Feiyong smiled faintly. "When the time comes, you will naturally know. What about them?" Big Black Wolf pointed at the master of the Xiao family and the others. "Don't leave a single one alive," Qin Feiyong said indifferently. "All right." Big Black Wolf chuckled. "You dare to kill us? My second uncle is from the Dragon God Palace, and his cultivation is even stronger than yours. If you dare to kill us, even if you escape to the ends of the earth, my second uncle will not let you go." Xiao Yunwen roared. "People from the Dragon God Palace." Qin Feiyong's eyes flashed, and said with a smile, "Then what's your second uncle's name?" Xiao Yunwen said proudly, "Listen well, my second uncle's name is Xiaoda." "Xiaoda? Okay. I'll remember it." Qin Feiyong nodded, glanced at Big Black Wolf and said, "Do it." What? Everyone was shocked. They thought that Qin Feiyong asked because he was afraid, but they did not expect that he would actually kill them. Quickly escort Yunwen away. The master of the Xiao family also shouted at the same time. A group of guards immediately ran outside with Xiao Yunwen. "Hey!" Big Black Wolf grinned. He disappeared in an instant. Then he appeared in front of the master of the Xiao family in an instant. The master of the Xiao family had already taken out his pinnacle divine artifact. But before he could recover, Big Black Wolf slapped him with his claws, and his head exploded like a watermelon. "Father! Master!" Xiao Yunwen and a group of guards roared. "Don't worry, you will accompany him soon." Big Black Wolf grinned again, teleported again, and disappeared without a trace. Quick! A group of guards carried Xiao Yunwen and fled frantically. However, before they could escape to the tea house, Big Black Wolf had arrived, his claws dancing wildly. Accompanied by shrill screams, the group of people's heads exploded one after another, and blood splattered everywhere. In the blink of an eye, the group of people all fell to the ground. The bloody scene made the others' scalps tingle. Too ruthless. Even their souls were not spared. "It's your honor that I'm going to rob your Xiao family, and you still want to settle the score with me? You really don't know what's good for you." Big Black Wolf patted his claws, walked to the opposite of Qin Feiyong, and sat down looking around. Everyone lowered their heads one after another. Whether it was their faces or eyes, they were filled with fear that could not be dispelled. "Don't be nervous. I'm not interested in small fries like you. If you also have a family behind you, it's a different story." Big Black Wolf grinned. Everyone's eyes trembled. Wasn't it obvious? This beast was eyeing them covetously, wanting to rob their family's treasure vault. No. I'm an orphan, and I don't have any family background." Buddy the Bill, that blue-clothed youth, hurriedly waved his hand, threw down a few hundred divine crystals, and fled the tea house without looking back. "I'm an orphan too. Me too, please don't come looking for me." Once the blue-clothed youth left, how could the others sit still? They all took out their divine crystals, and fled without looking at the amount. In less than 3 breaths, in the entire hall, except for a few waiters who were in a daze, there was no one else. It seemed extremely empty. The guests upstairs also fled back to their own private rooms one after another. The tea house fell into a dead silence. So many orphans. Big Black Wolf's mouth twitched. "Since you said so, what else do they dare to say?" Qin Feiyong shook his head. Big Black Wolf said disdainfully, I'm not interested in ordinary small families. Qin Feiyang shook his head and laughed. Sir. No, sir, sir. The waiter who served Qin Feiyang and Big Black Wolf came back to his senses and hurriedly walked in front of Qin Feiyang, looking at the empty hall with a wry smile. Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and a large pile of divine crystals appeared. This. The waiter looked at the pile of divine crystals in a daze. There were at least a few 100,000 divine crystals, like a small mountain. They basically paid the bill before they left, so you didn't lose anything. However, it will more or less affect you, so take this as compensation. Qin Feiyang said with a faint smile. Thank you, sir. The waiter thanked him repeatedly. After putting away the divine crystals, he glanced at the corpses on the ground and asked, What about them? Qin Feiyang waved his hand and said, Don't worry about them before the people from the city lord's mansion come. All right. The waiter smiled helplessly and turned to the other waiters, saying, Hurry up and clean up the other tables. The waiters immediately moved. Those who collected divine crystals collected divine crystals. Those who cleaned. Those who cleaned the tables wiped the tables. They were very busy, but from time to time, they would glance at Qin Feiyang and Big Black Wolf with a trace of suspicion in their eyes. This man and dog killed people, but they didn't leave. What did they want to do? After cleaning up, the waiters didn't know what to do. They all stood behind the altar and looked at Qin Feiyang and Big Black Wolf from afar. How shocking! The Xiao family was robbed. What do you think happened to our Black Rock city recently? First, the city lord was killed. Then the Wu family's patriarch was killed after he succeeded the city lord. Now it's the Xiao family? Why do I feel like there's a conspiracy? Soon, two young men whispered as they walked into the tea house. Something's wrong with the atmosphere? Why is it so quiet? And there's a pungent smell of blood? The two were stunned and looked around. When they saw the blood and corpses on the ground, their faces suddenly changed. Then, the two turned around and ran out as if their lives depended on it. Originally, the waiters had already gone to greet them, but when they saw the situation, their expressions were full of helplessness. Then, even if someone came in again, they couldn't be bothered to greet them. On the street outside the door, more and more people gathered. A few bold people poked their heads out and looked at Qin Feiyang and Big Black Wolf curiously. What's going on? Who are that man and dog? Who's the corpse on the ground? Everyone who came to the tea house couldn't help but ask the insiders. And the insiders didn't hide anything. They told the story in detail, spittle flying everywhere. Chapter 2402. The city lord's mansion was also very efficient. Hundreds of breaths. A group of black armored guards followed the two guards out in a grandiose manner. Everyone was wearing black armor and holding long spears. They were filled with a murderous aura. At the back, there was an old man in black. He had his hands behind his back and walked with a majestic gait. His aura was unfathomable, and his sharp gaze was also incomparably deep. What a powerful aura. He seems to be the former butler of the Wu family. What's his name? Yes, his name is Fan Yunzhang. Why does the aura he exudes feel like it has surpassed the Divine Lord level? The pedestrians on both sides of the street looked at Fan Yunzhang in surprise. Move. The two guards who led the way saw the crowd outside the tea house and immediately shouted. Someone from the city lord's mansion. Everyone's pupils shrank as they hurriedly retreated to the side. The two guards quickly walked into the tea house. When they saw the corpses on the ground, their faces couldn't help but turn pale. The group of black armored guards also did the same after entering the tea house. What's wrong? Fan Yunzhang frowned. Butler, look. The black armored guards made way. Fan Yunzhang walked in and glanced at the corpses of the Xiao family's patriarch and the others. They must be the ones who killed the patriarch and young master. Mr. Butler, you must avenge us. The two guards of the Xiao family pointed at Qin Feiyang and the big black wolf and roared. Fan Yunzhang raised his head and looked at the man and the dog. Beginner god of war? Beginner god of war? Immediately, he was slightly stunned. No. To be able to kill the Xiao family's patriarch without causing any damage to the tea house. This was enough to show that the man and the dog had the ability to kill the Xiao family's patriarch in an instant. Moreover, The two guards of the Xiao family also said that the big dog had the cultivation of a half-step divine lord. It was precisely because of this that he came personally. In the Black Rock City, except for the dragon's messengers, a half-step divine lord was already an invincible existence. Fan Yunzhang looked coldly at Qin Feiyang and the big black wolf and said, "Killing the innocent and robbing the Xiao family. How should you be punished?" "That's pretty impressive." The big black wolf snickered. "You're about to become the city lord, so of course you have to have some prestige." Qin Feiyang chuckled. "Didn't you hear me? Don't think that just because you're a half-step transcendent god, you have the right to behave atrociously in Blackstone City." Fan Yunzhang roared furiously. A terrifying aura burst out from his body. Fan Yunzhang has indeed stepped into the half-step paramount god stage. The original city lords of the Wu clan and the Xiao clan were killed one after another. Now in Blackrock City, only the Xia family is a match for Fan Yunzhang. But the Xia family has always kept a low profile and has no intention of becoming the city lord. In my opinion, this time, it's very possible that Fan Yunzhang will make a comeback and become the new city lord of our Blackrock City. Everyone whispered in each other's ears. However, Fan Yunzhang heard every word of this discussion, and a faint smile appeared in his eyes. This was what he needed, because this way, it would be easier to obtain the position of city lord. The big black wolf rolled its eyes and looked at Fan Yunzhang with grievance. "Lord Fan, this is wrongly accused. We didn't attack first." No matter who attacked first, killing people in Blackrock City is already a capital offense. Be honest, and take the initiative to follow me to the city lord's mansion. Maybe you'll have a way out. But if you resist, you may die a worse death than the Xiao clan. Fan Yunzhang said. "Fuck." The big black wolf immediately cursed. "Be obedient." Qin Feiyang glared at the big black wolf, got up, looked at Fan Yunzhang, and said with a smile, "Okay, we'll go with you." "What?" The big black wolf was stunned. Fan Yunzhang was also a little stunned. He was just saying that casually, because he didn't expect that the man and the dog would follow him obediently. He was even prepared to attack. But unexpectedly, the other party was actually so straightforward, which caught him a little off guard. The few workers were also in a state of confusion. They thought that the man and the dog were waiting for the city lord's mansion to come and make a big fuss. But they never expected that they were waiting for the city lord's mansion to arrest them. Was there something wrong with their heads? How could a person with a clear mind do such a stupid thing? Qin Feiyang led the big black wolf to Fan Yunzhang's side and said with a smile, "What are you waiting for? Let's go." Fan Yunzhang finally came back to his senses and looked at Qin Feiyang suspiciously. He waved his hand and said, "Take them back to the city lord's mansion." Two black armored guards immediately walked toward Qin Feiyang and the big black wolf. "You dare to come close to me?" The big black wolf glared fiercely. The two black armored guards' bodies stiffened slightly, and they turned to look at Fan Yunzhang, because they also heard what happened in the Xiao clan. After all, the big black dog was a genuine half-step transcendent god. With their cultivation, they couldn't afford to offend it. Fan Yunzhang frowned and waved his hand. "Let them go. That's more like it." The big black dog smiled proudly, glanced at the group of guards and shouted, "Why aren't you leading the way? Is this a prisoner or a master?" The group of black armored guards walked toward the city lord's mansion with dark faces. Qin Feiyang was neither happy nor worried along the way. The big black wolf raised its head proudly, striding forward as if it didn't recognize its own kin. Fan Yunzhang walked at the back, looking at the backs of the man and the dog. He was quite depressed. He was also thinking, was this a prisoner or a master? Not long after, a huge mansion came into sight. The mansion was heavily guarded. The three words "City Lord's Mansion" were like iron hooks and silver strokes, exuding a threatening aura. "Sir." When they saw Fan Yunzhang, the four guards standing on both sides of the door immediately bowed. "Yes." Fan Yunzhang nodded and said to the group of guards in front of him, "I'll take them to see the emissary. You guys do your duty." "Yes." The group of guards responded respectfully and spread out to guard the city lord's mansion. "Let's go." Fan Yunzhang glanced at Qin Feiyang and the big black wolf, then strode into the city lord's mansion and walked down a corridor. As Qin Feiyang walked, he looked around. Although he had been to the city lord's mansion twice, it was the first time he walked in openly. Don't say. The layout of the city lord's mansion was quite good. Rockery, fountain, garden, stream, arch, bridges, towers, everything. Compared to the bustling outside, the city lord's mansion seemed incomparably quiet. About a few hundred breaths passed. Finally, Qin Feiyang came to a familiar place, the backyard of the city lord's mansion. Under the sunlight, the surface of the lake sparkled, and small fish could be faintly seen swimming in the water. A loft stood by the lake, and at this moment, just by the lake in front of the loft, a thin middle-aged man was sitting quietly on a bluestone, holding a fishing rod in his hand, obviously fishing. Fan Yunzhang brought Qin Feiyang and the big black wolf to the side of the bluestone and was about to speak. The middle-aged man was dressed in white, spotless, and exuded an ethereal aura. Without waiting for Fan Yunzhang to speak, the middle-aged man made a silent gesture. Fan Yunzhang hurriedly nodded, and also signaled Qin Feiyang and the big black wolf not to make a sound. Time passed by like this. The big black wolf was very impatient. He didn't know what Qin Feiyang was going to do. However, Qin Feiyang was very calm, and like the middle-aged man, he looked at the floating on the lake, without the slightest impatience. The more Fan Yunzhang looked, the more incredulous it was. How could there be such a calm person in the world? One must know. What he was facing now was the emissary of the dragons. Moreover, the cultivation of the emissary in front of him was even stronger than the previous emissary, Long Qi. Although they hadn't known each other for long, Fan Yunzhang had already roughly judged this person's cultivation. He was definitely an expert of the Nine Heavens realm. Swish! Suddenly, the floating on the water suddenly sank. It's hooked. Qin Feiyang smiled. The middle-aged man also took the opportunity to lift the fishing rod, and a half-meter-long black fish was directly pulled up. A trace of a smile appeared on his face. Congratulations, sir. Fan Yunzhang immediately flattered him. Isn't it just catching a fish? What's there to congratulate? The middle-aged man shook his head and smiled, took off the fishing hook, and put the black fish back into the lake. Fan Yunzhang looked a little embarrassed. It seemed that this emissary didn't like others to flatter him. The middle-aged man put down the fishing rod, turned his head to look at Qin Feiyang and the big black wolf, and laughed. I heard that you robbed the Xiao family, killed the father and son of the Xiao family, and even slandered my dragons? It's true. Qin Feiyang nodded. Fan Yunzhang once again looked at Qin Feiyang in surprise. He actually didn't have the slightest intention of quibbling. The middle-aged man didn't seem to be angry, and said with a faint smile, "Facing this seat, aren't you nervous?" "Why should I be nervous?" Qin Feiyang asked back. The middle-aged man said, "Because this seat is a dragon, and you are a human. Shouldn't humans be naturally afraid of dragons?" "Naturally afraid? I don't agree with your words. That's because no matter if it's humans or dragons, they're just ants in this world. In other words, we are equal. Since we are equal, why should we be afraid?" Qin Feiyang said with a faint smile. "Haha. From the time when we were fishing, this seat had already seen that you are not an ordinary young man. Now that I look at it, it is indeed so. A temperament like yours is as rare as phoenix feathers and Qilin horns among humans." The middle-aged man laughed and seemed to be somewhat admiring. "You have a good temperament too. Unlike other dragons, who are overbearing, impetuous, and full of greed and intrigue." Qin Feiyang smiled faintly, and there was also some appreciation. "Haha. Interesting." The middle-aged man couldn't help but laugh again. Fan Yunzhang and the big black wolf next to him were more and more puzzled. One was the emissary of dragons, whose duty was to defend the dignity of dragons. The other was a sinner who slandered dragons and despised dragons. When these two types of people met, shouldn't it be a scene of Mars colliding with Earth? Why was it that now they were happy and harmonious, as if they regretted not meeting sooner? Chapter 2403. The middle-aged man couldn't stop laughing. Qin Feiyang stood quietly on the ground. The corners of his mouth also pursed into a smile. It was as if he wasn't facing a powerful enemy now, but an old friend that he hadn't seen for many years. After a few breaths, the middle-aged man finally stopped laughing. A trace of disappointment crept up his face and sighed. It's a pity that you're not one of us dragons. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. So you still want to kill me? I'm very good at judging people. In the future, you will more or less have some achievements. If I keep you, I'm afraid you'll become a trouble for us dragons. The middle-aged man said. Qin Feiyang said, Dragons are so powerful, are you still afraid of me, a junior of the future? Junior of the future, the middle-aged man muttered, as if he thought of something and sighed. The juniors of the future are amazing, they can't be underestimated. Fan Yunzhang's eyes flashed and asked, Sir, are you referring to a person called Qin Feiyang? How do you know? The middle-aged man's eyes suddenly flashed with a cold light. Fan Yunzhang didn't panic and said respectfully, Lord Long Qi told me. The middle-aged man was stunned and frowned. Long Qi will tell you this? To tell you the truth, Lord Long Qi has helped me before, so Lord Long Qi trusts me more. Fan Yunzhang said. Amazing. Qin Feiyang muttered secretly. This Fan Yunzhang was indeed a talent. In fact, Fan Yunzhang and Long Qi didn't have any friendship at all. After all, he was just a small butler and didn't have much weight at all. Usually, it would be difficult to even meet Long Qi once, not to mention the gratitude of recognizing his worth. But now, Long Qi was already dead. Wu Dao and his son were also dead. So Fan Yunzhang could say whatever he wanted. As for the guards and servants of the city lord's mansion, usually they all had their own duties. Who knew if Fan Yunzhang and Long Qi had secretly contacted each other? So, the middle-aged man couldn't verify it. In this way, Fan Yunzhang had a relationship with Long Qi, and naturally it was easier to gain the middle-aged man's trust. The most brilliant thing was, Fan Yunzhang mentioned Qin Feiyang. In the entire Divine Land, only the dragons and the dragon-slaying palace knew about Qin Feiyang's existence. The dragons hid this from the world, because they were afraid of losing face. After all, he had repeatedly suffered losses in the hands of Qin Feiyang. If news of this were to spread, would the mighty dragons be unable to do anything to a mere monarch god? It would definitely affect the status of the dragons in the Divine Land. As for the Dragon Slayer Palace hiding the news, perhaps it was because they wanted to protect Qin Feiyang and didn't want him to attract too much attention. After all, there was an old saying that went, the tallest tree in the forest is the first to be destroyed by the wind. Therefore, keeping a low profile was not necessarily a bad thing. The reason why Fan Yunzhang was said to be brilliant was because of this point. As a lowly butler, it was impossible for him to know about Qin Feiyang's existence from any other sources other than Long Qi. Therefore, when the middle-aged man learned that Fan Yunzhang actually knew about Qin Feiyang, he would definitely believe most of it. The middle-aged man's face softened a lot and he asked, What did Long Qi say to you? Fan Yunzhang glanced at Qin Feiyang and the big black wolf and said, Is it convenient to talk here? It's okay, the middle-aged man said. Lord Long Qi said that Qin Feiyang is the descendant of Qin Batian and has an incredible divine weapon. He is a very difficult person to deal with. He also said that Qin Feiyang has already entered the Divine Land, but I don't know where he is hiding now. Fan Yunzhang said. He didn't say much, because if he said that Qin Feiyang had once seriously injured the dragons and greatly damaged the vitality of the ancestral dragons, the middle-aged man might become angry and kill him on the spot. In short, if he knew too much he would inevitably be killed. Is that all? The middle-aged man asked indifferently. That's all. Fan Yunzhang nodded. The middle-aged man's face completely softened and he sighed. Although I have never met this Qin Feiyang, he is indeed amazing. Even if I meet him, I can only escape. So powerful? Fan Yun had a very surprised look on his face. You don't understand. The middle-aged man shook his head, looked at Qin Feiyang and said with a smile, So, you juniors must not be underestimated. However, he didn't know that the person standing in front of him was Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang said with a smile, After hearing what you said, I really want to see how great he is. Haha. He has an incredible divine weapon. Even if you meet him, what can you do? The middle-aged man was curious. So what if he has an incredible divine weapon? What I like the most is to challenge the impossible, especially when it comes to people of the same generation. Because I always believe that I will not lose, Qin Feiyang said proudly. The middle-aged man looked at Qin Feiyang in surprise. This little guy was really getting more and more interesting. If he could be taken into the Dragon God Palace, he might really be able to do something. The middle-aged man asked, "What's your name? Where did you come from?" "Li Buer. I have no parents, I'm alone, and I have a dog as my companion," Qin Feiyang said indifferently. The middle-aged man looked at the big black dog, and then looked at Qin Feiyang. Suddenly, he released his majesty, and pounced towards Qin Feiyang. Fan Yunzhang and the big wolf retreated reflexively, but Qin Feiyang did not tremble at all. Like an iron pine, he looked at the middle-aged man with fear. "I admire you very much, but you are after all a human." The middle-aged man sighed, and a divine dragon power emerged, turning into a black arrow, carrying a shocking killing intent, shooting towards Qin Feiyang's forehead. Oh no! The big black wolf's expression changed. However, Qin Feiyang was still as steady as Mount Tai, looking straight at the black arrow. There was still no fear on his face. Seeing that the black arrow was about to pierce Qin Feiyang's forehead, the sharpness had already torn the flesh between his eyebrows, and streams of blood flowed out. But at this moment, the black arrow suddenly dissipated again. "Haha!" The middle-aged man laughed again. This calm in the face of danger, neither servile nor overbearing, bravely facing death. The more he looked, the more satisfied he was. In fact, before he was just probing. He wanted to see if this boy really had courage, or was he pretending to be calm. The result was obvious. Really courageous. Because before, although it was a test, he really had the intention to kill. In the face of this kind of death threat, if the other party was pretending, then he would inevitably reveal his true colors. However, this boy, even if the power of the dragon god was about to enter his forehead, there was no change in his expression. This kind of calmness could not be faked. Qin Feiyang was still as calm as an ancient well, because there was no reason to be afraid. If this man really wanted to kill him, he could definitely enter the castle in time at the last moment of his life. But the big black wolf was so scared that he broke out in a cold sweat. If Qin Feiyang really died here, then it would definitely not be able to escape. Fortunately, nothing happened. However, now was not the time to relax. This middle-aged man's thoughts were hard to guess, and no one knew what would happen in the end. What the hell is he doing? Fan Yunzhang could not help but mutter. A moment later, the middle-aged man calmed down and looked at Qin Feiyang. "Are you interested in entering the Dragon God Palace?" "What?" Fan Yunzhang looked at the middle-aged man in astonishment. He actually took the initiative to send out an invitation. This was the first time in the history of the Black Rock City. "Not interested." Qin Feiyang shook his head, and then said, "However, I am interested in the resources of the Dragon God Palace." "You are really direct." The middle-aged man laughed involuntarily. Qin Feiyang said, "I think it's better to be direct. It's too tiring to beat around the bush. Entering the Dragon God Palace, you can naturally enjoy endless resources. But the premise is, are you willing to go?" The middle-aged man said. Qin Feiyang said without hesitation, "As long as there are resources that can make me stronger, I will go. But entering the Dragon God Palace, I'm afraid you will also end up with the reputation of a lackey. For example, you scolded the Xiao father and son today, aren't you afraid?" The middle-aged man joked. "I am different from others. I am not trying to curry favor with you dragons. I am just using your resources to become stronger. Besides, in my eyes, there are no dragons or humans, only enemies and friends." Qin Feiyang said. "Haha, only enemies and friends. I appreciate your frankness. All right, you have passed the screening in advance. In the morning half a month, report to the City Lord's mansion. At that time, I will bring you to the Dragon God Palace to participate in the assessment. Remember, there will be no delay," the middle-aged man said. "Okay." Qin Feiyang nodded. "Fan Yunzhang, send them out." The middle-aged man waved his hand, took out his fishing rod, sat on the bluestone, and continued to fish. Not only is he not punished, But he is also recruited into the Dragon God Palace? Fan Yunzhang was a little confused. This was completely different from what he had imagined. This new Dragon Clan emissary is really hard to figure out. After coming back to his senses, Fan Yunzhang muttered to himself, looked at Qin Feiyang and the big black wolf and said, "Let's go." Qin Feiyang nodded. One man and one wolf followed behind Fan Yunzhang and quickly left the way they came. But suddenly, Qin Feiyang stopped, turned to look at the middle-aged man, and said, "Do you know why I stayed in the tea house and didn't leave after killing the Xiao father and son?" The middle-aged man raised his head and looked at Qin Feiyang suspiciously. "That's right. Why didn't you leave?" Fan Yunzhang also looked at Qin Feiyang suspiciously. "Because I was waiting for the people from the city lord's mansion." Qin Feiyang looked at Fan Yunzhang, then looked at the middle-aged man and smiled. "Because I want to see you." "See me?" The middle-aged man was stunned. "Yes. The first step to entering the Dragon God Palace is to go through your screening. Of course I have to come to you." Qin Feiyang laughed. The middle-aged man was stunned and frowned. "So, you were planning to enter the Dragon God Palace?" "That's right. But I still have to thank you for not killing me. See you in half a month's time." Qin Feiyang waved his hand, then took a step forward and left without looking back. Fan Yunzhang and the big black wolf also hurriedly followed, leaving the middle-aged man sitting alone by the lake, lost in thought. He was actually tricked. This human kid has some tricks up his sleeve. After a while, the middle-aged man came back to his senses and shook his head with a bitter smile. Chapter 2404. After leaving the backyard, Qin Feiyang went back the same way he came. The security in the mansion was also very tight. Whether it was the winding paths, the corridors, or the halls, they were all guarded by black armored guards. The big black wolf followed behind Qin Feiyang, and it still hadn't recovered from the shock. At the instant the middle-aged man attacked Qin Feiyang, its heart nearly jumped out of its chest. Fan Yunzhang didn't say a word along the way. He kept staring at Qin Feiyang's back, his eyes flickering. Who was this person? Why did it feel like there was a veil on his body? As a member of the Dragon Slayer Palace, he had the obligation to do certain things. For example, strangling. The person in front of him had courage and brains. He reckoned that he was also talented. If he really entered the Dragon God Hall, he would probably be a future opponent of the Dragon Slayer Palace. So, he wondered if he should find a chance to get rid of the man and the dog. "Are you planning to get rid of me?" Suddenly, a voice sounded in his mind. Fan Yunzhang's eyes trembled slightly. He actually guessed what he was thinking. "I know you're a member of the Dragon Slayer Palace, so it's not difficult to guess what you're thinking at this moment." Qin Feiyang smiled and said, "It was still a telepathic message." "How did you know?" Fan Yunzhang was shocked. "What do you think?" Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Fan Yunzhang's pupils shrank as he sized up Qin Feiyang and the big black wolf. He suddenly said in shock, "Are you? You only realized it now. You're really stupid." The big black wolf rolled its eyes at him. Fan Yunzhang couldn't help but smile bitterly and said, "Can you blame me? You're too good at hiding it." "How is it? This battle of wits and courage is passable?" Qin Feiyang asked. "It's more than passable. It's perfect. Now I finally know why the Qin Emperor ignored everyone's objections and insisted on making you the young lord. With your temperament and methods, the other 3/3 Supremes simply can't compare to you." Fan Yunzhang thought. "Objection?" Qin Feiyang was slightly stunned. He frowned and asked, "Who objected?" Fan Yunzhang said, "This subordinate has no authority to speak of these matters, nor do I dare to speak recklessly." "What a taboo. Could it be the other 3 emperors? Something's not right. Lu Xingyang probably won't object. Then there are only 2 emperors left. Maybe it's not just them. Some of the 8 great divine emperors might also be against it. Am I right?" Qin Feiyang said. Fan Yunzhang stared blankly at Qin Feiyang. Just from his previous attitude and tone, she was able to deduce so many things? Just how terrifying was this young lord? Qin Feiyang shot a glance at Fan Yunzhang and said coolly, "Looks like I was right. This subordinate is truly convinced." Fan Yunzhang did not answer directly, but his expression was full of admiration. The other 2 emperors, 8 great divine emperors. Interesting. It seems that the dragon-slaying palace is not as united as you said. Qin Feiyang smiled coldly. Fan Yunzhang smiled awkwardly. Let's not talk about the dragon-slaying palace for now. Now that the Xiao family's patriarch is dead, your position as the city lord is basically secured. You have to hurry up and find me an alchemy fire and an alchemy furnace. Qin Feiyang said. Young lord, do you mean that you killed the Xiao family's patriarch for me? Fan Yunzhang was suspicious. Isn't that nonsense? Big brother wanted to kill the Xiao family's patriarch when he heard that he wanted to compete for the city lord's position. As for meeting this messenger of the dragons, it's just a matter of convenience. Big Black Wolf secretly said. Fan Yunzhang was moved when he heard this. He hurriedly transmitted his voice. Thank you, young lord, for sharing my worries. It's a piece of cake. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Big Black Wolf suddenly asked. Old Fan, is there any threat to the Xia family? The Xia family? Fan Yunzhang thought for a moment and shook his head. The Xia family has always been well-behaved. Their disciples are also relatively low-key. There shouldn't be any threat. Shouldn't. So you're not sure? Big Black Wolf rolled his eyes and looked at Qin Feiyang. He transmitted his voice. Big brother, why don't we go and destroy the Xia family again? Keep your thoughts to yourself. Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes at him. Big brother, you're going too far. What thoughts would I have? I'm doing this for Old Fan. Threats have to be eliminated immediately to prevent any changes. Old Fan, don't you think so? Big Black Wolf poked Fan Yunzhang's back and winked. Fan Yunzhang laughed and said, Young lord, whatever you say. Old man, you really don't know what's good for you. Big Black Wolf glared at him fiercely. Fan Yunzhang smiled and didn't say anything. The Wu family, the Xiao family, and the former city lord provoked me first. That's why I dealt with them. But the Xia family has no enmity with us. Aren't you looking for trouble by going to deal with them? Don't think that I don't know that you're addicted to robbing. You're thinking about their treasure trove and herb fields. Qin Feiyang said. How is that possible? Am I that kind of greedy wolf? Big Black Wolf's thoughts were seen through, and he began to feel guilty. It doesn't matter if you are or not. In short, if others don't provoke us, we can't take the initiative to stir up trouble. This is the principle. Qin Feiyang said. Big Black Wolf said. Then what if we have no choice but to take the initiative to stir up trouble? Why do you have so many questions? Qin Feiyang glared at him angrily. Big Black Wolf said aggrievedly. I'm just taking precautions. Fan Yunzhang shook his head and smiled. He transmitted his voice. Young lord, speaking of the Xiao family, I forgot about someone. Xiaoda? Qin Feiyang asked. You know about this too? Fan Yunzhang was stunned. It's not a secret. Qin Feiyang said indifferently. That's true. The Xiao father and son were killed. I think this Xiaoda is very likely to return to Black Rock City. If he wants to fight for the position of city lord on a whim, then to be honest, I'm a little guilty. After all, he's from the Dragon God Palace. Fan Yunzhang said. Qin Feiyang asked. Then do you know what his cultivation base is? Fan Yunzhang pondered for a while and said. I heard from Wu Dao that Xiaoda broke through to the Paragon God Realm more than 10 years ago. Paragon God Realm? If he really dares to come back, I'll make sure that he can never go back. Of course. Even if he stays in the Dragon God Palace, he'll still die. Qin Feiyang said. Fan Yunzhang's heart trembled. With a few simple words, he announced Xiaoda's death sentence. This young lord was really a terrifying person. Before this, he still thought that this young lord was a kind and benevolent person. Not only did he help him improve his cultivation base, but he also helped him open the door of potential. One had to know. The door of potential was extremely important to a person. For example, to comprehend, and create divine arts. All of these required the gate of potential. Because the more the door of potential was opened, the higher one's potential and comprehension ability. It could be said that those who didn't open the door of potential, and those who opened the door of potential were completely different. For example, the speed of cultivation, the speed of refining soul stones, after opening the door of potential, would be faster than others. The door of potential could even affect the profound meaning of becoming a god. After opening the door of potential, it was easier to comprehend. In short, the door of potential was the treasure of the human body, which was endlessly useful. If it were others, even relatives and friends, they wouldn't be so generous, let alone their superior and subordinate relationship. Even Fan Yunzhang was worried that such an indecisive young lord would not be able to achieve anything. Until now. Only then did he truly understand Qin Feiyang. The young lord's benevolence and kindness were for the people around him. Towards the enemy, he was decisive and would never give the other party a chance. Fan Yunzhang's heart was a little happy because he had followed a wise master. Fan Yunzhang said telepathically, "Young lord, actually there is another task for you." Task? Qin Feiyang was stunned and asked suspiciously, "This task is a little troublesome, so I didn't tell you before." The higher-ups said that all the city lords in the north must be replaced by people from the Dragon Slayer Palace. Fan Yunzhang secretly said, "What?" Qin Feiyang was stunned. Fan Yunzhang laughed and said, "I knew that you would have such a reaction." "Are you joking with me?" Qin Feiyang frowned. "Would I dare to joke with you? This is indeed the task given to you by the higher-ups." Fan Yunzhang smiled bitterly. "All the cities in the north?" Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows and asked, "How many cities are there in the north?" "I have calculated that there are a total of 1,200 cities, big and small," Fan Yunzhang said. "Get lost." Qin Feiyang shook his head and left. What kind of joke was this? How much time would it take to change the city lords of 1,200 cities? He was not so free. "Young lord." Fan Yunzhang hurriedly chased after him and said secretly, "Don't be angry. Actually, this is for your own good. Because these people are the same as me. They only listen to your orders. Think about it. If you can do it, then the entire north will be under your control. To put it boldly, you will be the ruler of the divine land north." Fan Yunzhang persuaded earnestly. "I can't even manage the Black Tortoise realm. How can I have time to care about other people's business? I'm not afraid of trouble, I'm very, very afraid, understand?" Qin Feiyang glared at him angrily. Fan Yunzhang smiled bitterly. This young lord was truly an oddball. If it were someone else, they would be overjoyed. "Go and tell that divine general to stop bothering me, or I'll beat him up too." Qin Feiyang snorted and walked out of the gate of the city lord mansion with Big Black Wolf, without looking back. Fan Yunzhang stood at the door at a loss. The divine general was high and mighty. What could he say? Besides, the divine general had already left. He had no chance to say anything. It was a good thing to meet such a young lord, but it was also a headache. Sigh. With a low sigh, Fan Yunzhang turned and left. The most important thing now was to take the position of the city lord of Black Rock City. As for the young lord, he could slowly persuade him later. What's going on? They actually came out alive. The guards outside the door looked at the backs of Qin Feiyang and Big Black Wolf with a shocked expression. Originally, they all thought that the man and dog would definitely die, but they did not expect that they would run out alive and kicking. It was really strange. Chapter 2405. Walking on the street. It also aroused the suspicions of countless people. In everyone's eyes, the city lord's mansion was a tiger's den. If they were invited in, it would be fine. But if they were arrested, it would definitely be a situation of death. But the man and the dog were unharmed? And looking at them, they seemed to have gained something. What was going on? Could it be that this new messenger of the dragons had a grudge with the Xiao family? Was he protecting this man and the dog? What did you say? They're not dead. Xiao family's mansion. In a large hall, a woman in black looked at a guard below with a face full of disbelief. This person was Xiao Yunwen's mother, the wife of the Xiao family's master. The guard nodded and said, "A family disciple saw it with his own eyes. It's absolutely true." "Why? Looted the Xiao family's treasure vault and herb field, and killed my husband and child. Why didn't the city lord's mansion enforce the law impartially and kill them?" The woman in black said angrily, "Madam, 2 city lords have died one after another. A new city lord has not been chosen yet. I'm afraid this matter has something to do with the new messenger of the dragons." The guard said in a deep voice. "The messenger of the dragons?" The woman in black's pupils shrank, full of fear. The guard suggested, "Madam, why don't we ask the second master to come back? The second master is from the dragon god's palace. Maybe the messenger of the dragons will give him some face." The woman in black was silent for a while, then waved her hand and said, "Send someone to follow them first. No matter what, we can't let them escape." "Yes," the guard responded respectfully, turned around and walked out of the hall quickly. "No matter who you are, I must kill you," the woman in black murmured, her face full of resentment, and then took out the image crystal. Back to Qin Feiyang. He turned a blind eye to the strange looks he encountered along the way. Big Black Wolf was in high spirits. Many people thought that he and Qin Feiyang would die in the city lord's mansion, but now they came out alive. Looking at such a person's face, it felt relieved. Sir was so awesome. So what? Bite me. But gradually, Qin Feiyang couldn't help but frown. When he saw the big black wolf beside him flaunting its prowess, the anger in his heart immediately flared up. "Can you change this bad habit of yours? You didn't notice anyone following us?" Qin Feiyang thought. "What? Someone is following us?" The big black wolf was startled and immediately turned to look behind. More than 10 meters away, there were two middle-aged men in ordinary clothes mixed in with the pedestrians. Seeing the big black wolf turn its head, the two of them immediately looked around as if they were shopping. The big black wolf's eyesight wasn't very good, so it didn't notice them. It turned back to look at Qin Feiyang and thought, "Is there really someone following us? Don't try to scare me. Am I in the mood to scare you?" Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes at it. The big black wolf asked suspiciously, "Then do you know who they are?" "Right now, Fan Yunzhang has the final say in the city lord's mansion, so it can't be someone from the city lord's mansion. Then there is only one possibility left. The Xiao family," Qin Feiyang said. "Where are they? I'll go and destroy them now." A cold light flashed in the big black wolf's eyes. "No need. They are all small fries. Just get rid of them," Qin Feiyang said as he scanned the front. 100 meters away he saw an alley. "Follow me." The man and the wolf sped up and quickly entered the alley. The two middle-aged men looked at each other and hurriedly ran into the alley. But when they entered the alley, they found that Qin Feiyang and the big black wolf were already gone. "It seems that they found us. What do we do now? What else can we do? We must go back and report to Madam. We only hope that Madam won't blame us for not doing a good job." The two of them sighed, turned around, and merged into the crowd, disappearing. So it's them. In the ancient castle, the big black wolf looked at the image in the void with a trace of annoyance. They were so close, but they didn't notice them? This was really a disgrace in the life of a wolf. Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and the image in the void disappeared. He called out, "Fire Lotus." Not long after he finished speaking, Huolian walked in from the outside and entered the hall of the castle. "Help me organize the treasures looted from the Xiao family. If this wolf cub dares to embezzle, you know what to do." Qin Feiyang smiled. "I know." Fire Lotus glanced at the big black wolf with a smile in her eyes. Looking at Fire Lotus's eyes, the big black wolf couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. Time passed day by day. 3 days later, the city lord's mansion finally issued an announcement. Fan Yunzhang officially succeeded the city lord's position. And on the same day, the registration to participate in the Dragon God Palace's examination officially opened. When this news came out, many people immediately rushed to the city lord's mansion. Some were aiming for the Dragon God Palace's resources, but there were also people who sincerely surrendered. After all, the dragons had controlled the divine land for too long, and a large number of people had already accepted the rule of the dragons. Some people even felt that entering the Dragon God Palace was a kind of glory, to bring glory to their ancestors. Humans, they all had their own thoughts. Not everyone was like the people of the dragon-slaying palace. Of course, not everyone could enter the Dragon God Palace. Just the first stage of the selection of the dragon's messengers had stumped countless people. Soon, half a month passed. Early in the morning, Qin Feiyang woke up from his seclusion. He looked around the castle and the small courtyard outside, but didn't see Fire Lotus and the big black wolf. He washed up, changed into clean clothes and prepared to leave. Qin Dage. At this time, Fire Lotus's voice sounded. Qin Feiyang looked up and saw Fire Lotus and the big black wolf coming back from outside. Landing in front of Qin Feiyang, Fire Lotus smiled and said, "I came back to remind you, but I didn't expect you to come out of seclusion already. How could I forget such an important thing?" Qin Feiyang smiled and said, "But you guys, where did you come from?" "The Desert of Death. Yesterday was the day the Divine Treasury opened, so I took the big black wolf to open it. While I was at it, I also put the divine weapons and divine arts that I looted from the Xiao family into the Divine Treasury," Fire Lotus said. Qin Feiyang suddenly understood and said with a smile, "Although I am the ruler of the Black Tortoise world in name, in fact, you are the one doing all these things." "I'm just bored." Fire Lotus smiled. "You are not bored, you just want to help me share some of the pressure. If I have to take care of both the outside and the Black Tortoise world, I won't be able to handle it." Qin Feiyang shook his head. How could he not know what Fire Lotus was thinking? He was sincerely grateful to Fire Lotus, because at least, he didn't have to worry about the Black Tortoise world now. Fire Lotus giggled. Qin Feiyang thought for a while and said, "How about this? I'll go find you some helpers." "Sure." Fire Lotus nodded. "Okay. I'll go out first." Qin Feiyang said, "Aren't you going to ask how many crystal veins, soul veins, herbs and soul stones we got from the Xiao family this time?" Fire Lotus said. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, "No need as long as you know." Fire Lotus was secretly delighted. This was his unconditional trust in her. Qin Feiyang looked at the big black wolf and said, "Are you going to stay here or go outside with me?" "Of course we're going outside." The big black wolf didn't even think about it. "To be honest, I really don't want to take you with me." Qin Feiyang had a look of disdain. "Then I'm sorry. This emperor has decided to rely on you forever." The big black wolf smiled slyly. Qin Feiyang was speechless and was about to leave with the big black wolf. "Qin Dage, wait a little longer," Fire Lotus said again. "What's wrong?" Qin Feiyang looked at her suspiciously. Fire Lotus said suspiciously, "I don't know if it's an illusion these years in the Black Tortoise world, but I keep feeling that the Black Tortoise world seems to have changed a little." "Changed?" Qin Feiyang was stunned. "Yes. It seems to have become bigger than before." "Why don't you take a look?" Fire Lotus said. "I'll have to take a look." Qin Feiyang nodded. If it really had become bigger, it would be a joyous occasion for the creatures of the Black Tortoise world. Because the Black Tortoise world had become bigger, it could accommodate more creatures. Qin Feiyang closed his eyes and extended his perception. Soon, his perception spread throughout the entire Black Tortoise world. The Netherworld Sea, the Desert of Death, the Land of the Devil, Soul-Sealing Valley, including the size of the entire Black Tortoise world and the appearance of the mountains, there were no changes. However, he slowly discovered that the Black Tortoise world's overall area seemed to have increased a little, but it wasn't obvious. After all, for a vast continent, it was hard to see these changes when it was only 1 or 2 meters wide. This is very important. For the next period of time, you'll focus on observing this. If there's a situation, tell me immediately. Qin Feiyang opened his eyes and looked at Fire Lotus. "Okay." Fire Lotus nodded. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and left the Black Tortoise world with the big black wolf, appearing in the small alley from before. "Big brother, there's something I've wanted to say to you for a long time." The big black wolf hesitated for a moment and sent a message to Qin Feiyang. "What?" Qin Feiyang was suspicious. "Big sister is a good helper. Don't be like a block of wood," the big black wolf thought. "Good helper?" Qin Feiyang was slightly taken aback. He directly knocked the big black wolf's head and said angrily, "What are you thinking about all day long? Good helper, wasn't that his wife?" However, he and Huolian had a pure sibling relationship. "I'm doing this for your own good." The big black wolf lowered his head and said, "Let me tell you, don't say such things in the future. Otherwise, don't blame me for being impolite." Qin Feiyang glared at him. He didn't want to break this layer of relationship with Fire Lotus, because some things once exposed would slowly change. The big black wolf felt extremely wronged. It was truly a dog biting Lu Dongbin, not knowing how to appreciate kindness. Qin Feiyang ignored it and closed his eyes to sense the location of the three Black Panther brothers. If he wanted to go to the Dragon God Palace, he would definitely have to leave the Black Rock City. It was even possible that he wouldn't come back in the future. So before he left, he had to meet the three Black Panther brothers. After all, during this period of time, in order to help him find medicinal herbs, the three Black Panther brothers had done their best. As a person, one had to know how to be grateful. Chapter 2406. Soon, Qin Feiyang found the location of the three Black Leopard brothers, which was not far from the Black Rock City. After giving the coordinates, the three Black Leopard brothers also used the teleportation altar and quickly descended into the alley. "Why are you with him?" Seeing the big black wolf at the side, the three Black Leopard brothers were rather surprised and discovered this fellow had actually broken through to the half-step Supreme God realm. Hee. The big black wolf laughed proudly. "How are the medicinal herbs?" Qin Feiyang asked with a smile. Without saying a word, the three Black Leopard brothers each took out a Qiankuan bag and threw it to Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang grabbed the three Qiankuan bags and checked them one by one. So many. A trace of surprise quickly crept onto his face. The three Qiankuan bags added up to 100. Moreover, all of them had roots, especially the condensing fire jade used to refine the Chaos Divine Pill. There were actually more than 30 of them. Black Leopard's eldest brother smiled obsequiously. "From these medicinal herbs, I believe you can tell that we haven't been lazy in the past 2 years. More than 2 years. Qin Feiyang was stunned. Thinking about it carefully, he had indeed been separated from the three Black Leopard brothers for more than 2 years. Because the last time he went into seclusion to break through to the Great Divine Lord, it took him more than 2 years. As for the three Black Leopard brothers, in these 2 years, from Cloud Mountain Village to Black Rock City, they had almost turned the sky upside down. Thank you for your hard work." Qin Feiyang sent the Qiankuan bag to the castle and handed it to the Fire Lotus, then looked at the three Black Leopard brothers and smiled. It's not hard. The three Black Leopard brothers shook their heads, but their eyes were filled with desire. Obviously, they were still thinking about the legendary level artifact. Qin Feiyang naturally understood what they were thinking, but now he was in a difficult position, because the other two legendary artifact, Fire Lotus, had been placed in the Divine Treasury. He had to keep the remaining Coiling Dragon Rod and Azure Phoenix sword for himself. "You're not going to go back on your word, are you? Let me tell you, in order to find these medicinal herbs, we've all risked our lives. There were a few times when I fought a few beast emperors, I almost lost my life," the eldest Black Leopard said. Black Panther number 2 and Black Panther number 3 also nodded repeatedly, indicating that they had the same experience. Qin Feiyang smiled awkwardly. "I knew you humans were unreliable. Fine. We don't want this legendary divine artifact. Just help us remove the control. In any case, we didn't have much hope in the beginning." The three Black Leopard brothers were extremely resentful, like three little widows who had been wronged. Qin Feiyang's face was burning. The three Black Leopard brothers had indeed done their best. If he did not give them some benefits, it would really not make sense. The big black wolf didn't know what was going on, but after listening to these conversations, he roughly understood what was going on. It looked at the three Black Leopard brothers and looked at Qin Feiyang with admiration. "Big brother, I admire you the most. You are my idol. If you go back on your words, I will be very disappointed." "Big brother?" The three Black Leopard brothers looked at the big black wolf in astonishment. The big black wolf smiled proudly and said, "You guys still don't know, right? I've already acknowledged him as my big brother. What's going on? Haven't you always disliked humans?" The three Black Leopard brothers were puzzled. The big black wolf said, "He's an exception." "Exception?" The three Black Leopard brothers were stunned. They sized up Qin Feiyang and really couldn't see that he was an exception. He was as shameless and deceitful as other humans. Cough, cough. Qin Feiyang coughed dryly and looked at the three Black Leopard brothers with a smile. I found that you guys are quite capable. It just so happens that I'm also preparing to find a few helpers for Fire Lotus. Why don't you guys go and help her? What the hell? You want us to be your coolie? No way. The three black leopard brothers said angrily. Don't. The big black wolf hurriedly ran to the three black leopard brothers and whispered. Brothers, are you stupid? Why don't you cherish such a good opportunity? Opportunity? Wolf pup, are you dreaming? How can this be called an opportunity? He just wants to find a few free coolies. The three black leopard brothers snorted. The big black wolf was stunned inside. It seems that you guys don't know Qin Feiyang well. Qin Feiyang? Isn't his name Gao Shaosan? The big black leopard brother was suspicious. That's a fake name. His real name is Qin Feiyang. He's a descendant of Qin Batian. Now he's the young lord of the dragon-slaying palace. Come. Let me tell you guys, look at my cultivation. Have I broken through to the half-step supreme god level? Peel off this fur and look at my glabella. Is there the mark of the gate of potential? Let me tell you, this is all given to me by Qin Feiyang. The big black wolf brought the three black leopard brothers and ran to a corner inside, whispering to each other. The three black leopard brothers exclaimed from time to time. Qin Feiyang shook his head and smiled, ignoring them. After a while, the big black wolf finally finished and asked, Now tell me, is this an opportunity? Yes. The three black leopard brothers kept nodding. That's why I said you guys are stupid. Let me tell you, when you enter the black tortoise world, you must curry favor with Big Sister. Because Big Brother's treasures are all under her care. As long as you curry favor with her, what's a legendary artifact? You can step into the half-step supreme god level and open the gate of potential. The big black wolf said. Makes sense, the big black leopard brother whispered. He looked at the two brothers and asked, Second brother, third brother, let's just make a happy decision like this? Of course. Black Panther second and Black Panther third elders nodded. After the discussion, the four beasts returned to Qin Feiyang. Big brother. After my strict criticism and education, they already know their mistakes. And they promised again and again. They will follow Big Sister and take care of the affairs of the black tortoise world. The big black wolf said valiantly. Isn't this persuasion? How did it become criticism and education? You really don't forget to show off at all times. A leopard can't change its spots. The three brothers glanced at the big black wolf, their eyes full of disdain. Of course, Qin Feiyang wouldn't believe the big black wolf's nonsense. He ignored it and looked at the three brothers, asking, Have you really decided? Yes. Besides, we don't dare to say no now. Because we already know your secret. If we say we're leaving now, you'll definitely kill us. The three brothers said helplessly. Pretty smart. All right, you guys go find the Fire Lotus. As for whether you can obtain these fortunes, it'll depend on your own abilities. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. With a wave of his hand, he sent the three brothers to the black tortoise world. Big brother, I helped you persuade these three capable generals. Should I get a reward? The big black wolf smiled at Qin Feiyang. Whether they're capable generals or not, we'll know in the future. But the reward can't be little. Hurry up and turn into a dog. This is the reward. Qin Feiyang joked. The big black wolf bared his teeth. He wanted to bite him, but he didn't have the guts. Qin Feiyang smiled. He took out an illusory form pill and threw it into his mouth. He turned into the appearance of a muscular young man. This was the appearance he had when he went to meet the dragon's messenger half a month ago. The city lord's mansion. In front of the gate, the black armored guards were like iron spears. They stood straight and gave off a sharp aura. Fan Yunzhang stood in the middle of the gate. He wore a black robe and had his hands behind his back. Ever since he became the city lord, his appearance was completely different from before. His temperament was also different from before, bringing with it a great sense of oppression. Outside the gate, a group of people gathered. There were about 100 people. There were men and women, old and young. Their cultivation was also different. There were war gods and divine lords. Everyone's face was filled with anticipation and excitement. That's right. They were the people who passed the selection of the dragon's messenger and were about to go to the Dragon God Palace to take the test. Look, it's him. After disappearing for half a month, he finally appeared. But what is he doing here? Could it be that he is also going to the Dragon God Palace? But these days, I haven't seen him come to register. Suddenly, the crowd was in an uproar. Everyone's eyes looked in a certain direction, only to see a man and a dog slowly walking over. It was Qin Feiyang and the big black wolf. Young lord. Fan Yunzhang's cold face also showed a slight change, but he quickly concealed it. The people here are all going to the Dragon God Palace for the test. What are you guys here for? Suddenly, a blue-clothed young man stood in front of Qin Feiyang and the big black wolf, raising his eyebrows. Qin Feiyang was slightly stunned. He looked at the blue-clothed young man and lowered his head to look at the big black wolf. He said, "Don't you think that this person looks familiar?" "Yes, I think I've seen him somewhere before." The big black wolf nodded. Hey, don't go too far. We met at the Phoenix Bamboo House half a month ago." The blue-clothed young man said angrily. Phoenix Bamboo House. Half a month ago. Qin Feiyang was startled. "Big brother, I remember now. He's the one who was slapped by you. Trash." When the big black wolf said the word trash, he grinned at the blue-clothed young man. The provocation was no longer concealed. So it's him. Qin Feiyang suddenly realized. He looked at the blue-clothed young man and laughed. "I'm sorry, my memory is bad. I can't even remember the names of ordinary people. They are obviously humiliating Kai Xiaoshu on purpose. This is too much. How dare you be so arrogant after coming to the city lord's mansion?" And the city lord is still standing at the door. Everyone immediately began to discuss angrily. The blue-clothed young man was also furious. "So your name is Kai Xiaoshu. You are indeed a noob." The big black wolf laughed. "You." The furious Kai Xiaoshu raised his fist and smashed it at the big black wolf. "Are you not afraid of death?" The big black wolf glared at him. Kai Xiaoshu shivered. How could he forget that this bastard was a half-step transcendent god? He quickly withdrew his fist and retreated. Apart from fear, there was also hatred in his eyes. "Don't be so arrogant if you don't have the ability." The big black wolf laughed disdainfully. "It seems like you're the arrogant one." Some people grumbled in their hearts. However, they did not dare to say anything in front of their strength. This was the cruelty of the world. The weak did not even have the right to express their opinions. Chapter 2407. After that, dozens of people came one after another. When these people saw Qin Feiyang and the big black wolf, they were also a little stunned. However, basically they were very tactful. Qin Feiyang also stood on the side, closing his eyes to rest, looking out of place. As for the big black wolf, it glanced at the group of people, its eyes flashing. No one knew what kind of conspiracy it was planning. The sun was high in the sky. Da-da. Accompanied by a steady sound of footsteps, the messenger of the dragons came out of the city lord mansion. Behind him, there was a middle-aged man. At this moment, he was wearing a black robe, about 7 feet tall. His body was quite thin. His eye bags were sunken, and his pair of deep black eyes were obviously a little cold. Why is he here? When I came to sign up last time, I didn't see him. Someone looked at the man in black and said in surprise. Greetings to the messenger. Fan Yunzhang bowed. The black-armored guard knelt on one knee. Greetings to the messenger. Seeing this, the participants of the assessment also knelt down and kowtowed. But Qin Feiyang and the big black wolf did not. They were like cranes in a flock of chickens, looking particularly dazzling. The man in black standing behind the messenger of the dragons immediately looked at Qin Feiyang and the big black wolf. In his eyes, a trace of killing intent immediately emerged. At the same time, Qin Feiyang frowned and slowly opened his eyes. That was because he could feel the killing intent. Looking at Fan Yunzhang, and then at the messenger of the dragons, Qin Feiyang's eyes finally fell on the man in black. The killing intent came from this person. He couldn't help but feel suspicious. Who was this person? At that time in the backyard, he didn't see this person. Moreover, judging from the aura, this person's cultivation was not very strong. Could it be the subordinate of the messenger of the dragons? What? They didn't kneel. The others also slowly discovered that Qin Feiyang and the big black wolf were still standing. and their hearts were suddenly shocked. Should there be a limit to arrogance? Standing there was the messenger of the dragons. This man and dog were really lawless. Go crazy. Continue to be arrogant. When the emissary gets angry, it will be the time of your death. Kai Xiaoshu sneered inwardly. Li Bu Air, big black dog, don't be rude. Hurry up and kneel before Lord Envoy. Fan Yin shouted. He was also extremely nervous. Even though the envoy of the dragon clan admired the young exalted lord, there were still so many people watching. If he were to ignore it, it would damage his reputation as the envoy of the dragon clan. The murderous intent in the black-clothed man's eyes intensified. He said respectfully to the dragon's messenger, Lord Messenger, this man and dog are too daring. Let me kill them. The messenger of the dragons looked at Qin Feiyang silently. The scene was dead silent. Everyone's heartbeats could be heard. The big black wolf was also rather perturbed. However, Qin Feiyang remained indifferent. He didn't even try to avoid the gaze of the dragon's messenger. The man in black said again, My lord, this kid is too arrogant. Please give the order. Yes, you deserve death for offending your superiors. The blue-clothed young man also roared coldly. Motherfucker, how dare he stir up trouble? The big black wolf stared at Kai Xiaoshu, his eyes flashing fiercely. Suddenly, the dragon's messenger's eyes darkened. He looked at Qin Feiyang and asked, Why don't you kneel? I only kneel to my parents. I don't kneel to the heavens and earth. I don't kneel to any living beings. Qin Feiyang said lightly. He's still so arrogant. Oh my God. How can there be such a bold person in this world? Not kneeling to the heavens and earth. Does he really think he's invincible? Everyone glanced at Qin Feiyang, their eyes full of contempt. That's right. It's best if he can be more arrogant. Otherwise, how can I have the chance to get rid of you? Kai Xiaoshu laughed in his heart. In his opinion, Qin Feiyang's behavior was very, very stupid. He was courting death. The scene fell into dead silence again. Looking at Qin Feiyang, no one knew what the dragon's messenger was thinking. Qin Feiyang was still the same. If he dared to force him to kneel, then he would definitely make this dragon's messenger regret. Although the ninth heaven realm was very strong, it was not impossible to kill. After a long time, the dragon's messenger suddenly smiled, raised his hand to the people kneeling on the ground and said, All of you get up. What? He's not going to pursue the matter. What's going on? Everyone was suddenly dumbfounded. The black-clothed man and Kai Xiaoshu's expression was incomparably exaggerated. Their angry mouths were wide enough to stuff an egg into. Fan Yunzhang secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Although he had heard of Qin Feiyang's methods, he had not seen it with his own eyes. Moreover, this dragon's messenger had the cultivation of the ninth heaven realm, so it was inevitable that he was worried. You are all selected by this seat. I believe that as long as you are willing to work hard, your future achievements will be extraordinary. And the Dragon God Palace. The Dragon God Palace is a sacred cultivation ground that countless people yearn for. The dragon's messenger smiled faintly. These were all words of encouragement and introduced the basic situation of the Dragon God Palace. Big brother, are you really not afraid at all? The big black wolf asked. Afraid of what? Qin Feiyang said. The big black wolf secretly said, I know you have the ability to kill him, but if you show these trump cards, your identity will also be exposed. That's right. But it turns out that what I did was correct. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Why do you look like you already know that he won't make a move on you? The big black wolf was suspicious. To get along with a person, you must first understand the other party's character. The dragon's messenger in front of you is the kind of person who is proud but not arrogant, humble but not humble, and has a simple temperament. What he values is not a person's attitude, nor a person's family background, but their temperament and talent. In fact, this kind of person hates flattery the most. If you show your true ability and can make him look at you in a different light, then as long as you don't touch his bottom line, he won't be calculative. Qin Feiyang secretly said. So that's the case. The big black wolf was suddenly enlightened and asked suspiciously. Then how did you see through it? Fishing. Qin Feiyang said. Fishing? You can see a person's character by fishing. The big black wolf was stunned. Of course. Fishing is a small test of one's patience, and a big test of one's state of mind. Of course, just fishing is not enough. It depends on his words and actions. Back then, it was when I talked to him that I figured out his personality. Qin Feiyong smiled. I see. The big black wolf nodded in realization. Some people like to flatter. There are also some people who love vanity. And some people are sinister and cunning. If someone likes it, then there will definitely be someone who hates it. In short, you have to use different methods to deal with different people. Using an old saying, you have to prescribe the right medicine for the illness. Qin Feiyong smiled faintly. Amazing. As expected of my idol. The big black wolf laughed. Unknowingly, he learned some skills from Qin Feiyong. During the conversation, the dragon's messenger also finished the introduction. This is the basic situation of the Dragon God Palace. As for the details, after you successfully enter the Dragon God Palace, you can slowly understand it. Next, Xiaoda will bring you to the Dragon God Palace to participate in the assessment. Xiaoda, I believe the people of Blackrock City are familiar with him. Before the assessment, you have to listen to him. The dragon's messenger pointed to the man in black next to him and said, So he's Xiaoda. Qin Feiyong muttered. No wonder he showed killing intent to him. No wonder he wanted to kill him again and again. Interesting, the dragon's messenger asked. Do you have any other questions? No. Everyone shook their heads. Good. The dragon's messenger nodded, turned to look at Xiaoda and said, Bring them there. Yes. Xiaoda nodded respectfully, then waved his hand, and more than a dozen altars appeared, neatly arranged in the sky, and shouted, Everyone go up. Hearing this, the group hurriedly rushed toward the altars. Let's go too. Qin Feiyong called the big black wolf, and walked toward one of the altars. Young lord, you have to be careful. This Xiaoda will definitely harm you on the way. Fan Yunzhang's voice suddenly sounded in Qin Feiyong's mind. When did he come back? Qin Feiyong was suspicious. A few days ago. But seeing that he was quite honest, this subordinate did not disturb you, young lord. But not long ago, he came to find the dragon's messenger, and said that he wanted to go back to the Dragon God Palace. So why not let him take you there? Originally, the dragon's messenger planned to personally take you to the Dragon God Palace. But when he heard Xiaoda's words, he found it troublesome, so he agreed. But this subordinate knows that this Xiaoda is definitely coming for you, Fan Yunzhang secretly said. It doesn't matter. As for the alchemy fire, are you ready? Qin Feiyong asked via voice transmission. I'm still missing a cluster of second-grade alchemy fire. When this subordinate finds it, I'll personally send it to you, Fan Yunzhang said. Good. Qin Feiyong responded, and jumped onto the altar with the big black wolf. It was really fate. Kai Xiaoshu was also on the altar. Seeing Qin Feiyong and the big black wolf come up, Kai Xiaoshu's face suddenly had a trace of displeasure. What bad luck. Everywhere they went, they would bump into each other. The dragon's messenger glanced at everyone, and his eyes suddenly fell on Qin Feiyong. He said lightly, Little guy, don't let this lord down. The group immediately stared at Qin Feiyong in surprise. The dragon's messenger actually talked to him alone? Don't let this lord down. From what he said, it seemed that he appreciated this person. What was going on? They did not see him at the registration, but now he suddenly came. After coming here, he also had an arrogant attitude. He even openly contradicted the dragon's messenger. However, not only did the dragon's messenger not blame him, he even appreciated him. Isn't this too outrageous? Kai Xiaoshu suddenly raised his hand and shouted, Lord Messenger, I have something to say. Everyone looked at him in unison. Qin Feiyong and the big black wolf also looked at him suspiciously. Lord Messenger, when Li Bu'er killed the Xiao father and son, this lowly one was there, so I know the whole story. This Li Bu'er was extremely daring. He looked down on the dragons in public, and even said that the Xiao father and son were the dragon's lackeys. Because Xiao Yunwen heard this, he righteously stood out and attacked him. In other words, the Xiao father and son were protecting the dignity of the dragons. They died for the dragons. So this lowly one thinks that this Li Bu-er is not qualified to enter the dragon god's hall, and should be killed on the spot. Kai Xiaoshi roared angrily. Chapter 2408. Yes. I don't think he's qualified either. Please punish him severely. Most of the people were instigated by Kai Xiaoshi. A small group of people didn't say anything, but there was a trace of displeasure on their faces. Xiaoda didn't stop them. The messenger of the dragons glanced at Kai Xiaoshi, then at the others and said, "It seems that you're very dissatisfied with my decision. We don't dare. We just hope that the messenger can handle it impartially. We can't let the Xiao family's father and son die in vain." Kai Xiaoshi said. Boom. A peerlessly terrifying pressure instantly pounced towards Kai Xiaoshi. What? Kai Xiaoshi's expression changed. They actually attacked him? What the hell is going on? But he didn't dare to dodge. He didn't have the strength to dodge. The aura surged and Kai Xiaoshi's face was filled with fear. If you really have an opinion, you can go to the patriarch of the Black Dragon clan, or even the ancestral dragon and dragon sovereign. But before that, you'd better shut your mouth. Because I don't like noisy people. It's not up to you to tell me what to do, understand? The messenger of the dragons said coldly. I know. Kai Xiaoshi quickly nodded. The messenger of the dragons protected the aura. He wanted to make things difficult for Qin Feiyang. But he didn't expect that he would be the one being humiliated. Why was this? Could it be? What was the relationship between Li Bu-er and the messenger of the dragons? Xiaoda glanced at Qin Feiyang, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. He looked down at the messenger of the dragons and said respectfully, Lord, I'll take them away. Okay. The messenger of the dragons nodded. Xiaoda waved his hand, and divine power appeared and poured into the dozens of teleportation altars. Buzz! The altars were immediately activated, and the group disappeared quickly. The messenger of the dragons retracted his gaze and said with a smile, Fan Yunzhang, what do you think? I don't dare to talk nonsense. Fan Yunzhang quickly said, It's okay, just say it. After the messenger of the dragons finished speaking, he turned and walked inside. Fan Yunzhang hurriedly followed. After thinking for a moment, he said, Since my lord wants me to say it, then this lowly one will be bold enough to say a few words. This Xiaoda has ulterior motives. The dragon's emissary laughed. Then do you think Li Bu-er can safely reach the dragon god palace? Fan Yunzhang stared blankly for a moment, then said in admiration, So sir has already seen through everything. Even you can see through it. If I can't, then wouldn't I be inferior to you? The messenger of the dragons said, Since you have seen through it, and you admire Li Bu-er so much, why do you allow Xiaoda to do as he pleases? Fan Yunzhang looked at the dragon's emissary suspiciously. Be it humans or dragons, how can they grow without experiencing wind and rain? If Li Bu-er can reach the dragon god palace alive, doesn't that prove that he is indeed a talent? The messenger of the dragons said. I see. Fan Yunzhang suddenly understood and asked, Then what if he dies on the way? If he dies on the way, then it means that I have misjudged him. The messenger of the dragons smiled faintly. Fan Yunzhang shook his head and smiled bitterly. He was not worried about Qin Feiyang, but he was a little worried about Xiaoda. It was your bad luck to meet the young lord. Back to Qin Feiyang and the others. After opening the altar 10 times in a row, Xiaoda finally stopped. Below them was an endless stretch of mountains. The ferocious beasts here were not comparable to the ferocious beasts near Blackrock City. Here, the weakest was a half-step supreme god. Is this the dragon god palace? Everyone looked around in surprise, but they did not see anything similar to a building. Qin Feiyang and the big black wolf were also looking around suspiciously. We haven't reached the dragon god palace yet. Suddenly, Xiaoda said, We haven't arrived yet? Then why did we stop? Someone was puzzled. Lord Xiaoda stopped. Of course there is a reason to stop. Why are you talking so much nonsense? Why don't you lead the way? Kai Xiaoshi shouted arrogantly, and directly began to flatter Xiaoda. That's right. The messenger has said that we have to listen to Lord Xiaoda's instructions. As a smart person, what we have to do is to obey, not ask questions. A few more people jumped out and stood together with Kai Xiaoshi. Their attitude was arrogant. Seeing this, some people couldn't help but show a trace of contempt in their eyes. Xiao De glanced at Kai Xiaoshi and the others with a smile in his eyes. These brats were quite tactful. Qin Feiyang looked at Xiao De and secretly laughed. Big wolf dog, see, he is a person who likes to flatter. The big black wolf glanced at Xiao De, his eyes full of disdain. Wait, how did this emperor become a big wolf dog? Big brother. Just as the big black wolf was about to express his dissatisfaction, Kai Xiaoshi pointed his spear at them. Li Bu'er, at the Phoenix Bamboo House, didn't you call us lackeys? Why are you doing this now? Aren't you slapping your own face? Kai Xiaoshi sneered. Qin Feiyang glanced at him. Kai Xiaoshi, you don't understand. Some people just like to pretend. Otherwise, how can he show that he's better than others? The others beside him also mocked. I see. Kai Xiaoshi smiled and shook his head. In the end, he's just a hypocrite. Li Bu'er, tell me, what gift did you give to the messenger? Why is he so protective of you? Kai Xiaoshi, how can you ask this kind of thing? It's fine as long as everyone knows. If you ask this, what if he gets angry and comes to take revenge on us? Yeah. The beast beside him is a half-divine god. We can't afford to offend it. The group of people echoed each other, their faces full of mockery. The others looked at Qin Feiyang and the big black wolf with disdain. They were wondering why the messenger of the dragons would be so protective of them. It turned out that he had given them a huge gift. Xiao De looked at Qin Feiyang and the big black wolf with a cold smile. He suddenly yelled, "Shut up! Master Xiao De, I'm just stating the facts. Especially your brother and your nephew Xiao Yunwen. Their deaths were the most unworthy." Kai Xiaoshi said indignantly. Xiao De's hands that were hidden in his sleeves clenched, but his face remained calm as he said, "Don't mention the past again." Kai Xiaoshi shut his mouth resentfully. He thought Xiao De would go crazy on the spot, but he did not expect Xiao De to be so calm. Xiao De looked at the others and said, "Stay here and don't run around. The beasts here are quite terrifying. Li Bu'er, black dog, come with me." Saying this, Xiao De flew toward the mountain on the left. "Where are we going?" Qin Feiyang asked. The others also looked at Xiao De suspiciously. "The messenger thinks highly of you, so he has a few words that he wants me to tell you in private," Xiao De said. Qin Feiyang's eyes flickered and he said with a smile, "Then there's no need to go somewhere else. We can send a message. The messenger also has something that he wants me to give you. This thing is very important and can't be seen by outsiders. In short, just follow me," Xiao De said without turning his head. "Okay." Qin Feiyang nodded and chased with the big black wolf. The big black wolf's eyes lit up and he asked excitedly, "Brother, what do you think the messenger of the dragons has prepared for us?" "Idiot." Qin Feiyang was stunned and glared at him. "Why are you scolding me?" The big black wolf looked at him unhappily. "If the messenger of the dragons really has something for us, why didn't he give it to us directly? Why did he ask this person to pass it to us?" Qin Feiyang thought to himself. "That's right." The big black wolf slapped his head and sent a voice transmission. "Then what does this person want?" The next moment, he stared at Qin Feiyang and said in surprise, "It can't be. Obviously." Qin Feiyang shrugged. "This damn thing, I'll destroy him." The big black wolf immediately roared. Qin Feiyang was stunned and smiled. "Okay, I'll leave it to you later." Ahem. The big black wolf's body stiffened and he smiled embarrassedly. "How would I dare to steal your limelight? It's better for you to do it yourself." What a joke. Fan Yunzhang had said that Xiao De had already broken through to the initial stage of the immortal realm more than 10 years ago. He was 2 whole stages higher than him. Leave it to him. Wasn't that courting death? Only a fool would do such a thing. After a few hundred breaths, Xiao De finally stopped after flying for hundreds of thousands of miles. Qin Feiyang and the big black wolf looked at each other, and also stopped in the void. Xiao De turned to look at the man and the wolf. He crossed his arms and didn't say anything, but there was a trace of killing intent in his eyes. Qin Feiyang asked, "Where's the thing that the messenger of the dragons asked me to deliver?" "Haha." Xiao De immediately laughed out loud, full of ridicule. "What's wrong?" Qin Feiyang looked at him suspiciously. Do you really think there's something to give you? Xiaoda laughed. No. Qin Feiyang was slightly stunned and frowned. Are you lying to us? If I don't trick you here, how can I kill you without anyone knowing, and avenge my big brother and the others? Xiaoda laughed sinisterly. Despicable. Qin Feiyang's expression suddenly changed, and he immediately fled with the big black wolf. Boom! A terrifying pressure immediately surged, and the man and the wolf were imprisoned on the spot. It's too late to run away now, Xiaoda sneered and said. How about this? I'll give you a chance. Take the initiative to kneel down and apologize, and I'll leave your bodies intact. Impossible. Let's not beat around the bush. The messenger is our backer. If you dare to touch us, the messenger won't let you go. The big black wolf said angrily. Ha! Backer? Indeed, the messenger admires you, but it's just admiration. Besides, no one saw with their own eyes that I killed you. Even if the messenger investigates, I can easily get away with it. At that time, I'll say that you overestimated yourselves and went to provoke some beasts and were killed by them. Xiaoda sneered. You're really a villain, Qin Feiyang said in a deep voice. Xiaoda's eyes darkened and shouted, Don't talk nonsense. I'll ask you one last time. Do you want to kneel down? Chapter 2409. Qin Feiyang and the black wolf looked at each other and burst into laughter. Ah! Xiaoda looked at them in surprise. How dare they laugh? Old man, do you really think we don't know what you're trying to do? I was just teasing you. The black wolf's eyes were full of mockery. Teasing me? Xiaoda's face suddenly showed a trace of hostility. He released his aura and rushed toward the man and the wolf. The black wolf stood up, waved his paw, and said contemptuously, Do you think you can imprison us with your little aura? How is that possible? Xiaoda looked at the black wolf in shock, then looked at Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang also raised his hand and touched his chin with a playful expression. How could the aura of a lesser paragon god not be able to imprison them? Now we'll give you a chance. Kneel down and apologize to us, and we'll leave your corpse intact. The black wolf said. Ha! Are you kidding? Now I'll send you to hell. Xiaoda was so angry that he laughed. His aura suddenly burst out, and he slapped at the black wolf. A half-step paragon god was just an ant in his eyes. How dare he be so arrogant? Brother, go. The black wolf took a few steps back and waved his paw. It looked like he was closing the door and letting the dog out. Qin Feiyang glared at him, took a step forward, and disappeared from Xiaoda's sight. So fast. Xiaoda was shocked. He quickly stopped in the void and looked back and forth. Where are you looking at? All of a sudden, Qin Feiyang's voice sounded behind him. He quivered, and without any hesitation, he struck out with his palm. Boom! At the same time, a monstrous murderous aura erupted. Even Kai Xiaoshi and the others hundreds of thousands of miles away felt the murderous aura. What happened? Are they fighting? The group of people was shocked. Ha! In the sky above the mountain range, a painful scream rang out. A wisp of blood-red light, carrying a destructive power, shattered Xiaoda's arm, and then pierced through Xiaoda's back. A bloody hole appeared on his lower abdomen, and blood spurted out. How is this possible? Xiaoda stared blankly at the bloody hole, forgetting the pain. Not only could a large success divine lord ignore his pressure, but he could also instantly cripple his qi. Was he dreaming? Clang! A blood-colored sword was suddenly placed across Xiaoda's neck. Xiaoda shuddered as he looked at the blood-red sword. The shock in his eyes intensified. The power and murderous aura of this blood sword far exceeded that of the previous blood sword. So what if you're an utmost god? I've killed at least 8,000 autarchs, if not 10,000. Who do you think you are? You dare to plot against me? You are really courageous. Qin Feiyang said lightly. What the hell is going on? Xiaoda's gaze trembled. Just a large success, divine lord. He was also too ridiculously strong, right? Hee. The big black wolf leaned forward and said, Old man, how does it feel to go for wool and come home shorn? Don't be arrogant. I'm from the Dragon God Palace. If I die on the way, you won't be able to escape responsibility. Xiaoda shouted. Haven't you already taught us what to do? Kill you and push the blame to the beasts. I believe that our words will be very convincing. Because in the eyes of others, we don't have the strength to kill you at all. The big black wolf laughed. Xiao Da's body and mind trembled. Not talking anymore? I haven't vented my anger yet. Who are you? How dare you harm us halfway? The big black wolf raised his claws and beat him up. Xiao Da howled miserably. He felt aggrieved and panicked. He was the one who came to settle the score with this man and dog. But he didn't expect to fall into their hands. What should he do? Was he, a small success divine lord, really going to be bullied by two ants? However, he couldn't think of a way. His chi was crippled, and he could only use his divine sense. He couldn't even self-destruct. Besides, he couldn't bear to self-destruct. It wasn't easy for him to cultivate to this level. And he hadn't enjoyed life yet. As for his divine sense, he didn't dare to, because the blood sword was on his neck. If he dared to use his divine sense, the other party would definitely cut off his head with a sword. At that time, he might not even be able to save his divine sense. After thinking about it, he could only think of begging for mercy. I'm sorry. I'll kneel down and kowtow to you. I beg you, please be magnanimous and give me a way out. I promise that I won't bother you again in the future. Xiao Da couldn't care less. He hurriedly knelt in the void, kowtowing while begging. You're kneeling just like that? The big black wolf was stunned and mocked. You're a small success divine lord after all. Where's your backbone? After saying that, he slapped Xiao Da's head with his claws again. A big, shiny meat bun immediately bulged. However, Xiao Da didn't care at all, and kept begging for mercy. The big black wolf said disdainfully, with your cowardice, you're only fit to be the dragon's lackey. Yes. I'm a good-for-nothing. I'm a dog. Can you be kind and not argue with a dog like me? Xiao Da cried out. The big black wolf was stunned. He thought that these words would stimulate this person's courage, but he didn't expect him to admit it. Good fellow, he was really shameless. Boring. The big black wolf shook his head. If he had courage, he would be interested in torturing him for a while more. But now he couldn't be bothered to kill him. Kill him? The big black wolf looked at Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang was speechless. Why don't we keep him for the new year? No. Let's talk nicely. I'm begging you. When Xiao Da heard this, his body trembled violently, and his heart was filled with despair. However, Qin Feiyang turned a deaf ear to him, and waved the long sword in his hand. His head immediately rolled down. A divine soul immediately rushed out from the top of his head, frantically running for his life. It was Xiao Da's divine soul. Qin Feiyang waved the blood sword again, and waves of blood-red sword qi surged out. Immediately, the divine soul was also annihilated in the void with a miserable howl. He's courting death. The big black wolf snorted, and immediately rushed over to search him. Qin Feiyang dispersed the blood-red long sword and muttered to himself, damn it, he's poor. Soon, the big black wolf cursed angrily. From Xiao Da's body, it found an interspatial ring and a divine artifact. But the divine artifact was only a peak divine artifact. And in the interspatial ring, there were only a few soul stones, divine crystals, herbs, elixirs, and some teleportation altars. With his cultivation level, he's definitely just a small character in the Dragon God Palace. How many treasures can he have? Qin Feiyang said lightly, glancing at the mountain below. The previous battle had scared away the fierce beasts in the mountain. At this moment, within a radius of tens of thousands of miles, it was quiet. Not even a mosquito could be seen. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed, and he took out the image crystal. Soon, a shadow appeared. It was Fan Yunzhang. Greetings, young lord. Fan Yunzhang hurriedly bowed. Is it convenient to talk? Qin Feiyang asked. Fan Yunzhang laughed and said, of course it's convenient for your subordinates to call you that. Qin Feiyang said, I want the Xiao family to disappear completely. Fan Yunzhang's heart trembled, and he said in surprise, Xiao Da has already made his move? Qin Feiyang said lightly, not already made his move, he's already dead. Fan Yunzhang was stunned, and said in admiration, young lord is indeed powerful. Stop flattering. Can you do it? Qin Feiyang said. A piece of cake. Fan Yunzhang smiled confidently. Very good. Also, Give me the coordinates of the Dragon God Palace. Qin Feiyang said. Okay. Fan Yunzhang nodded. As a member of the Dragon-Slaying Palace, he naturally knew the location of the Dragon God Palace, because this was the most basic knowledge of the Dragon-Slaying Palace. However, Qin Feiyang was somewhat shocked. This was because Fan Yunzhang had given him 40 coordinates in a row. In other words, from here to the Dragon God Palace, he still needed to activate 40 teleportation altars. In addition to the 10 teleportation altars from Black Rock City to the Dragon God Palace, there would be a distance of 50 teleportation altars. This was too far. After turning off the image crystal, Qin Feiyang lowered his head and pondered again. Xiao Da's matter was just a small episode to him, but he still had to deal with the aftermath. Suddenly, Qin Feiyang had an idea, glancing at the mountain range further away, and smiled at the big black wolf. I'll bring you to play. Play what? The big black wolf was curious. You'll know later. Qin Feiyang smiled, and brought the big black wolf with him, streaking across the sky at lightning speed. Roar! Chirp! Rumble! Not long after, on the other side of the mountain range, there was a series of earth-shaking loud noises, as well as the roars and hisses of beasts and birds. Boss, you're too much of a scammer. You call this over? After a while, accompanied by an angry voice, Qin Feiyang called him the Xing character formula and ran over with the big black wolf. To be exact, not running, but fleeing for their lives, because behind them, there was a large group of beasts and birds, densely packed. There were at least 500 to 600 of them, and they were all Paramount God-level beasts. There were even a few that were Paramount God-level beasts. Originally, the big black wolf thought it was something good, and ran over with Qin Feiyang excitedly. But it didn't expect that Qin Feiyang would directly attack as soon as he saw the beasts. And he specifically picked Paramount God-level beasts. Wasn't this stupid? What do you know? If it weren't for them, who would believe us when we say that Xiao Da died under the claws of the beasts? Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes at it. But there's no need to summon so many? The big black wolf looked back, and was immediately scared out of his wits. That mighty beast tide was too terrifying. Wherever they went, mountains collapsed and the earth cracked. Qin Feiyang shook his head, and a wisp of blood appeared. Several wounds appeared on the big black wolf's body, and blood flowed out. What are you doing now? The big black wolf said angrily. Of course I have to do it. Kai Xiaoshu and the others are not idiots. When they see that we are unharmed, they will definitely be suspicious. Qin Feiyang laughed. The big black wolf's face darkened and said, Then why don't you hit yourself a few times? Isn't this because you are protecting me? When they see it, you can also get a good reputation for being loyal. Qin Feiyang chuckled, and also got some blood from the big black wolf's body, and smeared it on his clothes, looking quite embarrassed. I don't care. The big black wolf snorted coldly, and suddenly rolled his eyes and said, Shouldn't Kai Xiaoshu and the others be taught a lesson? As long as you are happy, it's up to you. Qin Feiyang said. The big black wolf suddenly laughed sinisterly. P.S. If there are duplicates or wrong friends, please refresh or add a new bookshelf. Chapter 24:10. Back to Kai Xiaoshu and his group. At this moment, they were hiding on the peak of a mountain, lying in the grass, restraining their aura, and not daring to breathe loudly. This was because when Qin Feiyang attacked and killed Xiao Da, the nearby beasts fled. Some of the beasts came to Kai Xiaoshu and his group. These beasts were nothing in Qin Feiyang's eyes, but in the eyes of Kai Xiaoshu and his group, they were like gods. Therefore, they hid immediately and restrained their aura to the extreme, fearing that they would be discovered by the beasts. Why isn't Xiao Da back yet? Why don't we go and take a look? Someone whispered. What nonsense are you talking about? Look below, there are dozens of beasts wandering around. Isn't it courting death if we run out? Kai Xiaoshu immediately scolded. Kai Xiaoshu is right. No matter what Xiao Da and Li Buer are doing, it has nothing to do with us. Hiding here quietly and waiting for them to come back is the wise choice. Someone agreed. Roar. Chirp. Suddenly, waves of angry beasts roared from afar, deafening their ears. Closely after, Wisps of terrifying auras surged toward Qin Nan. What is happening now? Kai Xiaoshi and his group were bewildered. The ferocious beasts that were wandering below were also frightened, and immediately ran away. Look! Suddenly, one of them pointed to the sky in front of them, as if he had seen something extremely terrifying. His eyes trembled and his face turned pale. Everyone looked up and their bodies trembled. In the sky in front of them, there was a black mass of things like dark clouds, covering the sky and the sun. It seems to be beasts. It's a beast tide. The next moment, a perfected divine lord suddenly shouted. Due to the fact that his cultivation was stronger than others, he was able to see further than others. What? Beast tide? Everyone panicked. Why would there be a beast tide? What about Xiaoda, Li Bu'er and the big black dog? Could it be that they were attacked by the beast tide and had died? This is not good. It's really not good. Those are all beasts at the paramount god level. A few people's faces suddenly darkened as they said, "Damn it! Why is there an inexplicable beast tide? Everyone must restrain your aura, and not be discovered by them." The group of people was extremely nervous. Wait. There seemed to be two black shadows in front of the beast tide. It looks like a person and a dog. Suddenly, another person asked in bewilderment. Yeah, he seems to be. Someone took a closer look and exclaimed, "It's Li Bu'er and the big black dog." After a few breaths, the appearance of the man and the dog also became clear. It's really them. But why don't I see Xiaoda? Bastard, what a bastard. He actually lured the beast horde here? Are you trying to get us killed? You can't accept your own death, and now you want to drag us down with you. The group of people's faces were ashen, but they were cursing in their hearts. Where is he? Then he looked at Qin Feiyang and the big black wolf. A man and a wolf scanned the void, their eyes full of suspicion. He clearly remembered that everyone was here. But why wasn't there a single person around? His appearance was rather wretched. He was panting and sweating profusely. The big black wolf frowned and said, "They couldn't have gone to the Dragon God Palace first, right? No way. How could a group of people who haven't even reached the Supreme God realm know the coordinates of the Dragon God Palace? They're probably afraid of the fierce beasts in the mountains and are hiding somewhere." Qin Feiyang whispered and released his divine sense. As expected, soon, he found Kai Xiaoshi and the others at the top of the mountain. Looking at the group of people who were all scared out of their wits, he couldn't help but laugh in his heart. With such courage, they dared to go to the Dragon God Palace? Don't come over, don't come over. Seeing Qin Feiyang and the big black wolf flying towards the top of the mountain, everyone roared in their hearts. Wouldn't their hiding place be exposed the moment they came over? Just a glance at the beast tide behind them made their scalps tingle. Hey, 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 what are you hiding here for? Hurry up and open the altar to escape. Qin Feiyang and the big black wolf landed on the top of the mountain and shouted, "You two bastards, why are you still looking for us?" Kai Xiaoshi cursed. Nonsense. After all, we're companions. If you're in trouble, of course we can't leave you in the lurch. The big black wolf bared his teeth and laughed. Save your uncle. You're obviously here to harm us, but you still make it sound so dignified. Where can we go now? Do you know the coordinates of the Dragon God Palace? The group of people cursed angrily. Stop quarreling. Hurry up and return to Black Rock City. We'll talk about going to the Dragon God Palace later. Someone said, I know the coordinates of the Dragon God Palace. Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and more than a dozen altars quickly opened. How does he know the coordinates of the Dragon God Palace? Everyone looked at the altars in surprise. Hurry up! The big black wolf roared. Everyone shuddered and looked at the beast tide that was about to come. They all rushed towards the altars. That speed was very fast. In the blink of an eye, everyone landed on the altars. Qin Feiyang also rushed onto one of the altars. The big black wolf rolled its eyes and ran to another altar with a sinister smile on its face. Because Kai Xiaoshi was on this altar. Hurry up! Everyone stared at the approaching beast tide, and their hearts almost jumped to their throats. More than a dozen altars emitted a bloody light. Suddenly, the big black wolf kicked Kai Xiaoshi and several young men and women. They suddenly screamed and fell from the altars. What's going on? Everyone was extremely nervous at this moment, and their attention was on the beast tide. They didn't know how Kai Xiaoshu and the others fell down. Even Kai Xiaoshu and the others only knew that they were kicked down by someone, and didn't know who it was. In the next moment, more than a dozen altars emitted a bloody light. The people on the altars quickly disappeared. "Don't leave us behind!" Kai Xiaoshu and the others roared and rushed towards the altars frantically. But it was too late. The altars began to collapse. The beast tide had already rushed over. No! They wanted to activate the altars to return to Black Rock City. But it was too late. They were directly drowned by the beast tide. In the desperate screams, they were torn to pieces by the beasts one by one. In the sky above a barren forest, a group of people appeared together. It was Qin Feiyang and the others. That was close. Everyone patted their chests with lingering fear. Qin Feiyang and the big black wolf looked at each other and pretended to be relieved. "Li Bu'er, thank you so much." After calming down, everyone looked at Qin Feiyang and thanked him. "It's okay." Qin Feiyang waved his hand. "But then again, who kicked Kai Xiaoshu and the others down? This is too vicious. I was so nervous at that time. How would I notice this? Maybe they were too nervous and accidentally fell down." "Fell down? How is this possible?" "When I was on the altar, I glanced at them, and the one standing behind them seemed to be." The person who spoke suddenly looked at the big black wolf. "Why are you looking at me? You don't think I did it, do you? Am I that kind of despicable person?" The big black wolf immediately glared at him. No. That person quickly waved his hand. He thought to himself, "You are not human." But Xiaoda was not here, so he did not dare to be presumptuous. "That's right. Where was Xiaoda?" That person turned to look at Qin Feiyang and asked, "Li Bu'er, where is Master Xiaoda? Isn't he with you? Why didn't he come back?" The others also looked at Qin Feiyang again. Sigh. Qin Feiyang was silent for a while before he suddenly sighed and said, "Lord Xiaoda is already dead." "What? He's dead? How did he die? Could it be that you and Doggy killed him?" Everyone was surprised. "We killed him? Who said that? I'll show you right now. Let's see how I'll teach you a lesson. Xiaoda is from the Dragon God Palace. Would we dare to kill him? Besides, Xiaoda is a lesser paragon god. Do we have the ability to kill him? Grow a brain. Don't you know how to think?" The big black wolf roared angrily. Hearing that, everyone looked rather embarrassed, because that was what they all thought. However, what the big dog said made sense. After all, Xiaoda was a lesser paragon god. No matter how powerful the man and the dog were, it was impossible for them to kill Xiaoda. Someone looked at Qin Feiyang and the big black wolf and asked, "Then how did he die?" Qin Feiyang sighed and said, "You know that the dragon's messenger has something to give me." Everyone nodded. They had all heard it at that time. "Just after Xiaoda gave me the thing, a beast that had just become a paragon god suddenly ran out and attacked us. Naturally, we couldn't just sit there and wait for death, so Xiaoda killed it. But because he killed it, he angered all the beasts there. Several greater paragon god beasts immediately ran out to kill us. Xiaoda saw that the situation was bad, so he let me and the big wolf go first. Then," Qin Feiyang said bitterly. At this point he was so angry that he couldn't continue. "So that's how it is." Everyone was enlightened. In short, if Xiaoda hadn't sacrificed himself and stalled those beasts, the big wolf and I would have been dead by now. Qin Feiyang said, "You killed the Xiao father and son, so your hatred is as deep as the sea. But not only did Xiaoda not harm you, he even risked everything to save you. I have to say that he's really a good person." Someone sighed. "Yes, he's different from the Xiao father and son. He's really a good person," Qin Feiyang said with a face full of admiration. Looking at Qin Feiyang's appearance, the big black wolf's eyes hid a trace of disdain. This guy always said that others had good acting skills, but his acting skills weren't bad either. Someone asked, "He was the one who gave you the coordinates of the Dragon God Temple?" "Yes." Qin Feiyang nodded. Everyone was enlightened. It was impossible for this person to know the location of the Dragon God Temple. The dead can't be resurrected. Let's not be sad. Let's hurry to the Dragon God Temple. We have to work hard. We can't let Xiao Da's sacrifice down. Qin Feiyang took a deep breath and looked up at everyone. Yes, we can't let his death down. We have to work hard. Everyone nodded. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and opened a dozen more altars. The group jumped on one after another and disappeared. Chapter 24:11. In the north, in the deepest part, there was an incomparably huge mountain range. The towering mountain ridges were like divine dragons lying prone on the ground. In the mountain, there were towering ancient trees everywhere. Even the thinnest ancient tree needed several adults to hold hands to encircle it. The thickest ancient tree probably couldn't be encircled by dozens of people. The top of the tree reached into the clouds. Even the vines were as thick as buckets, like horned dragons, full of a strong aura. There was also a river, dozens of meters wide. The river water was rapid, winding through the mountains. The entire mountain range gave people a magnificent and majestic aura. But strangely, there wasn't even a single beast in such a huge mountain range. Not to mention beasts, not even a mosquito or a flying insect could be found. There was dead silence everywhere. This place was called the Divine Dragon Mountain Range. It was the most famous place in the Divine Land's northern region, and also the largest forbidden area in the north, because the Dragon God Palace was in the deepest part of the mountain range. The Dragon God Palace was a behemoth standing at the top of the northern region. No living creature dared to take half a step into the minefield. Outside the entrance of the Divine Dragon Mountain Range, there was a vast plain, as far as the eye could see. At this moment, groups of people came one after another and gathered on the plain. They were divided into different camps. Each camp only had about 100 or 200 people. There were strong and weak cultivators. There were war gods at the bottom and gods at the top. Occasionally, one could even see Ninth Heaven Realm powerhouses. As soon as these people landed on the plain, they looked at the Divine Dragon Mountain Range, their eyes full of expectation and desire. Moreover, in each camp there was a leader. As for those leaders, they all had arrogant expressions on their faces. Even those with higher cultivation than them would be respectful to them. For example, one of the camps. The leader of the group was a mere perfect paragon. In his team, there was a half-step Ninth Heaven Realm powerhouse. But, however, this half-step Ninth Heaven Realm was extremely respectful towards the peak Absolute God. Because these leaders were all dragons' emissaries. In the face of the powerful dragons, no matter how strong your cultivation was, you had to be obedient. This was the way of survival in the Divine Land. Time passed little by little. There were more and more people on the plains. There were men, women, old and young. There were at least 100,000 people. However, although there were many people, it was very quiet. Only the envoys gathered together to communicate. Swish! Suddenly, another group of people descended. Everyone looked over, and a trace of astonishment crept onto their faces. The strongest among them was only a half-step transcendent god. The most ridiculous thing was, it was a half-step paragon god, and a big black dog at that. Which city are you from? Someone asked curiously. However, no one in the group spoke. Looking at the sea of people on the plains, their faces were filled with shock and fear. There were actually so many experts. In the end, a muscular young man dressed in black stepped forward and said, "We are from Blackrock City." The aura that this muscular young man exuded was only that of an early-stage war god. But he was completely different from the others around her. Even though there were many experts on the plain, there was not the slightest bit of fear on their faces. It was as if this was a common occurrence. So it's Blackrock City. No wonder the strongest is only a half-step paragon god. Don't say that. It's already very rare for a half-step paragon god to appear in such a remote place like Blackrock City. But the funny thing is that it's actually a beast. Everyone revealed a look of realization, and the disdain in their eyes became even stronger. There were even people who did not hide their ridicule. Calling me a beast again? What the hell? Did I provoke them? They speak rudely as soon as they meet? The big black dog's heart was filled with anger. That's right. The big black dog was the big black wolf. The muscular young man was undoubtedly Qin Feiyang. In the face of everyone's ridicule, the big black wolf, and the other people of Black Rock City were a little annoyed. However, no one dared to say a word, because compared to the various camps on the plains, the people of Black Rock City were indeed too small. However, Qin Feiyang's face was still indifferent. Qin Feiyang turned a deaf ear to the ridicule. He glanced at the plains and saw that there was some empty space at the edge. He smiled and said, "Let's go over there." Everyone nodded and followed Qin Feiyang to the empty space. There was already a situation where they followed Qin Feiyang's lead. Although the big black wolf was unhappy, it could only endure, because many of these people had the strength to kill it in an instant. How pitiful. I think a small place like Black Rock City should be banned. That's right. Every time the Dragon God Palace recruits, Black Rock City's overall strength is at the bottom. The people of the various camps were whispering to each other. Big brother, why do I feel that these people are quite proud to be the dragon's lackeys? When the big black wolf heard these discussions, he transmitted his voice to Qin Feiyang. What's the big deal? Everyone has their own aspirations. Qin Feiyang smiled inwardly. He brought a group of people and landed on an open space. Immediately after, he looked at everyone and said, "Listen carefully, this isn't Black Rock City. None of the people here are easy to provoke. Don't cause trouble and behave." Everyone nodded. Why would they need Qin Feiyang's reminder? Anyone with a bit of eyesight would be able to see it. Moreover, those people were not wrong. Black Rock City was indeed a small place. The people around Qin Feiyang had not seen much of the world. When they first arrived here and saw so many experts, they were already scared silly. How would they dare to cause trouble? Shua. Suddenly, a white-robed old woman teleported and landed in front of Qin Feiyang and the others. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed. There was a faint dragon aura on the old woman's body. This meant she must be the dragon's, and the aura she emitted had also reached the 9 heavens realm. "Greetings, senior." Qin Feiyang clasped his hands. The others also bowed and saluted. The white-robed old woman glanced at everyone and looked at Qin Feiyang. She frowned and said, "Are you the one leading the Black Rock City?" "No." Qin Feiyang shook his head and said with a wry smile, "How can this junior be qualified? You really don't have this qualification. Where is the person leading your team?" The white-robed old woman asked with undisguised contempt. Qin Feiyang said, "There was an accident on the way. Xiaoda, who led the team, and several of our companions died under the claws of the beasts." "Xiaoda?" The white-robed old woman was stunned. "It's like this. This Xiaoda is originally from the Dragon God Palace." Qin Feiyang briefly explained the situation. Hearing this, the white-robed old woman looked at the others and asked, "Is that so?" Everyone nodded. Now these people were like birds startled by the twang of a bow. In any case, whatever Qin Feiyang said was the truth. "Then it's really not easy for you to come all the way here." The white-robed old woman's expression eased a lot. "It's indeed not easy," Qin Feiyang said. The white-robed old woman said, "I'm very curious. What did the messenger of Black Rock City ask Xiaoda to pass to you? If it wasn't for this thing, this accident wouldn't have happened." This, for a moment, Qin Feiyang really didn't know how to answer. What was there? It was simply Xiaoda's conspiracy. The white-robed old woman asked, "Is it still a secret?" The group of people from Black Rock City calmed down and looked at Qin Feiyang suspiciously. Qin Feiyang said, "Senior, this matter really can't be said. If you want to know, ask the messenger of Black Rock City." "Can I understand that you are using your Black Rock City's emissary to pressure me?" The white-robed old woman's expression became unfriendly. "I wouldn't dare." Qin Feiyang hurriedly shook his head. "How dare you? Who do you think you are? I asked you to tell me, so tell me honestly." "I don't mind telling you. If I accidentally kill you here, no one will dare to stop me." The white-robed old woman sneered. The people from the other camps, including the messenger of the dragons, didn't try to persuade him. They were all gloating. "Libor, just tell her. Don't drag us down." The people from Black Rock City hurriedly persuaded in a low voice. Qin Feiyang was not moved at all. He looked at the white-robed old woman indifferently and said, "Senior, you're here to pick a fight for no reason." The people from Black Rock City next to him were shocked. They knew that Libor was arrogant, But they didn't expect him to be so arrogant here. Wasn't he courting death? It didn't matter if he died, but he shouldn't drag everyone down with him. The people from the other camps and the messengers all looked at Qin Feiyang in astonishment. Was this person stupid? A mere low-level war god dared to offend the messenger of the dragons in public? The white-robed old woman also looked at Qin Feiyang in a daze. Obviously, she didn't expect that someone would dare to scold her in front of so many people. Saying that she was looking for trouble, wasn't that the same as scolding her? Boom! Immediately, a terrifying pressure surged out. Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows and said, "Senior." "Shut up. A lowly human has the right to call me senior? It seems that you really don't know your identity," the white-robed old woman said. "You're still trying to take advantage of me?" Qin Feiyang was stunned. He crossed his arms and said with a faint smile, "Then should I call you? In front of the dragons, you have to respectfully call me master, and call yourself a villain," the white-robed old woman said proudly. "Master? Villain?" Qin Feiyang smiled and said, "I'm neither your subordinate nor your servant, why should I?" This tone, this attitude, wasn't this too arrogant? Everyone felt that it was inconceivable to the extreme. Even the supreme god among them, the experts of the Nine Heavens realm, had to be respectful to the dragons. Where did this low-level wargod's courage come from? The people from the Black Rock City were about to cry. "Little ancestor, can you restrain yourself? Don't you have to look at the place and see who the other party is?" Haha. The white-robed old woman was so angry that she laughed. This was the first time she had met such a reckless human. "You don't even know the most basic distinction of seniority. It seems that your Black Rock City's messenger is neglecting his duty. Since that's the case, then let me take his place and teach you a good lesson." After the white-robed old woman finished speaking, she immediately slapped her palm towards Qin Feiyang, her eyes filled with killing intent. Chapter 24:12. How could Qin Feiyang dodge the white-robed old woman's speed at the half-step ninth heaven realm? So, he could only enter the castle. Shua. Just as the old woman in white made a move, Qin Feiyang grabbed the big black wolf and disappeared. "N. He still has a space divine item? No wonder he dares to be so arrogant," everyone suddenly realized. But the sarcasm on their faces became even stronger. Did he think he would be fine if he hid in a space divine item? One had to know. The old woman in white was a half-step to the ninth heaven realm. Even with the hidden soul stone, he would not be able to escape the search of her divine will. The old woman in white was also stunned and immediately burned with anger. He still dared to hide. Let her lose face in front of everyone? Unforgivable. Divine will immediately appeared. But at the same time, Qin Feiyang appeared out of thin air with the big black wolf. In the current situation, hiding in the castle might not be a good thing. Although the mystic moon jade pendant could block the old woman in white's search, once he used the mystic moon jade pendant, and the old woman in white could not find the space divine item, she would definitely be suspicious. But if he did not use the mystic moon jade pendant, and let the old woman in white find the castle, then it might be even worse. Therefore, entering the castle was not a long-term solution. He had to solve the root problem. At least he knows what's good for him, taking the initiative to come out. Otherwise, this space divine item would definitely not be able to be kept. That's right. How high can the level of a space divine item of an early stage war god be? With this old woman's strength, she can easily break it. Everyone whispered. The people of Black Rock City were also surprised. They never thought that this person would have a space divine item. "Why aren't you hiding? Continue." The old woman in white retracted her divine will and looked at Qin Feiyang with contempt. "Don't go too far." Qin Feiyang frowned. "Haha. How can there be such a naive human in this world? In front of us dragons, if I tell you to lie down, you have to lie down. If I tell you to kneel down, you have to kneel down." The old woman in white laughed with an incomparably arrogant expression. Qin Feiyang's brows furrowed tighter and tighter. Did she really want to force him to make a move? "Big brother, why don't we make a move? Let her see your strength. Let's see if she still dares to be arrogant. If worst comes to worst, we'll just change our identities and enter the Dragon God Palace." The big black wolf egged on. It couldn't wait for Qin Feiyang to make a move. This way, it would have a chance to vent its anger. Now I order you to kneel. And you. The white-robed old woman's arrogance grew as she stared at Qin Feiyang and the big black wolf. Kneel my ass. Why don't you take a look in the mirror? Who do you think you are? Are you qualified to make me kneel? The big black wolf immediately howled. I'll go. Even a dog like this dares to clamor with the messenger of the dragons. Has the world changed? Everyone was dumbfounded. My lord. If you want to kill them, then kill them. We are not with them. Li Bu-er and his big dog are so arrogant in the Black Rock City. Something's not right. They can no longer be described as arrogant. They are simply lawless. The people of the Black Rock City turned hostile as they ran behind the white-robed old woman and stared at Qin Feiyang and the big black wolf with righteous indignation. Fuck. You heartless things, if it weren't for my brother and me, you wouldn't have been able to escape from the beast's tide. Is this how you treat your benefactors? The big black wolf was so angry that its body trembled. Do you need to pretend? Even without you, we could have escaped. At most, we would have returned to the Black Rock City first. Besides, who was the one who attracted the beast's tide? Wasn't it you? And now, I seriously suspect that Kai Shaoshi and the others were kicked down by you. The group of angry people directly launched a crusade against Qin Feiyang and the big black wolf. You. The big black wolf was driven mad. Qin Feiyang stopped the big black wolf and looked at the white-robed old woman. He sighed and said, Look, it's just a small matter and you've made it like this? You're blaming me? The white-robed old woman was stunned. Don't you want to know what the emissary gave me? Fine. I'll tell you. The emissary gave me this spatial divine item. Qin Feiyang said lightly. That's impossible, right? The emissary of the Black Rock City gave him a spatial divine item. If this is true, then how much does the emissary of the Black Rock City value him? Everyone was surprised. The white-robed old woman also had a trace of surprise on her face. As an emissary, she knew the hidden meaning of this. An emissary like her would never put the humans of the major cities in her eyes, let alone give them a spatial divine item. And to be able to do this, it must be someone who was extremely valued. Qin Feiyang thought that by saying this, the white-robed old woman would stop. After all, they were both emissaries, and would more or less give each other some face. But unexpectedly, the white-robed old woman didn't stop and said, Who is the emissary of the Black Rock City now? Show me the spatial divine item. Upon hearing this, Qin Feiyang's patience instantly disappeared. The murderous intent in his eyes burst out. I say, you old bastard, aren't you annoying? What does other people's spatial divine item have to do with you? At this moment, a lazy voice suddenly rang out. It wasn't very loud, but it clearly reached the ears of everyone on the plane. Everyone fell into shock. There was actually someone who dared to jump out and make trouble. And even directly scolded the white-robed old woman as an old bastard without any concealment? His guts were too big. Who is it? Everyone came back to their senses and immediately scanned the crowd. The white-robed old woman was also stunned. She didn't expect that there would be so many people who were not afraid of death today. Who is it? Get out! After coming back to his senses, he also immediately shouted, Big brother, did I hear wrong? There is someone who dares to challenge the dragons? I also have some doubts about my ears. The big black wolf and Qin Feiyang were also very surprised. No, it was very unbelievable, not to mention openly challenging the other party, but also calling the other party an old bastard. This was no longer a matter of courage. It was the attitude. People who dared to say so. Their attitude towards the dragons was equivalent to disdain. This young master. That voice sounded again. Everyone looked in the direction of the voice and saw a young man of 18 or 19 lying on a big rock, his hands pillowed on his head, squinting his eyes, and a green foxtail in the corner of his mouth. And the clothes on his body were tattered, giving people a sense of desolation. But he was very good-looking. His facial features were as if they were carved by a knife, sharp and angular. Two sword-like eyebrows seemed to be carefully tailored with a sharp aura. His skin was a healthy bronze color. However, His temperament and spirit seemed a little lazy, as if he was sleepy. Who is he? He actually dares to be so arrogant. Everyone looked at the young man suspiciously. The big black wolf laughed and said, "Big brother, I finally met someone who can act better than you." This person's aura was very, very weak. Even the war god had not reached. Just a fake god. A fake god dared to challenge the dragons? This courage was really admirable. Qin Feiyang also looked at the young man in astonishment. His cultivation was indeed too weak. But was this his true cultivation? To be so arrogant, he must have the confidence. Perhaps like him, he was hiding his cultivation. The white-robed old woman could naturally see through the young man's cultivation, and immediately became furious, roaring, "Who brought this here? A fake god also has the qualifications to enter the Dragon God Hall?" The emissaries of the major cities looked at each other, as if they did not know each other. "So, he came here without permission? Little bastard. Do you know the consequences of coming to the Divine Dragon Mountain Range without permission?" The white-robed old woman stared at the young man, her eyes filled with killing intent. So annoying. The young man angrily spat out the green foxtail in the corner of his mouth, got up and looked at the white-robed old woman, and walked in front of Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang and Big Black Wolf both looked at the young man suspiciously. The young man asked, "Does Blackrock City still need people?" "What do you mean?" Qin Feiyang was stunned. The young man said, "Give this young master a spot." Spot. Qin Feiyang was stunned, and finally understood. This person wanted to get an identity through Blackrock City, then enter the Dragon God Hall examination. "This is not up to me. It needs the approval of the emissary of Blackrock City." He shook his head. "Aren't the emissaries not here? This young master has been watching for so long. It seems like you're the one in charge of Blackrock City. Just say it, are you going to give it or not?" The young man said impatiently. Qin Feiyang helplessly smiled and said, "If all the emissaries here agree, I naturally have no objections. If they don't agree, it doesn't matter to this young master, as long as you have no objections. Then from now on, this young master is a member of Blackrock City. During the Dragon God Hall examination, this young master will protect you." The young man yawned and said, "Protect me?" Qin Feiyang was stunned. This kid, is he dreaming? "Little bastard, how dare you ignore this one?" The old woman in white robe was furious. The young man was slightly startled, then turned to the old woman in white robe and said, "Sorry, I forgot. Why are you still here? Are you waiting to die?" The old woman in white robe's expression froze. The corners of Qin Feiyang's and the big black wolf's mouths twitched. Such an arrogant attitude was simply unprecedented. Even they felt ashamed of their inferiority. The others on the plane, and the emissaries were also dumbfounded. What was going on today? First, a lesser success god of war was extremely arrogant. Now an even more arrogant pseudo-god appeared. Has the world really changed? A mere god of war, and a pseudo-god could be so arrogant. "Little bastard, you dare to be arrogant in front of this one? Very well. This one will let you know the price of being arrogant in front of us dragons." The old woman in white robe clenched her teeth and threw a punch at the young man. "Open your eyes and watch carefully. This is the consequence of angering us dragons." The emissaries of the dragons said to the people behind them. In their eyes, the young man was already a dead man. The big black wolf asked, "Big brother, aren't you going to help?" "Let's wait and see." Qin Feiyang whispered and pulled the big black wolf to the side. This young man didn't seem to have any problems with his brain. Since there was nothing wrong with his brain, he must be hiding something. Chapter 24:13. Aside from Qin Feiyang, who held some expectations, no one else on the plane was optimistic about this youth's chances. A mere false god dared to challenge a half-ninth heaven realm cultivator? Wasn't he digging his own grave? But the next moment, everyone's eyes widened in disbelief. Qin Feiyang's pupil shrank. The young man slowly raised his arm and stretched out a finger. That's right. It was just a finger. However, it was this finger that easily blocked the white-robed old woman's fist. How is that possible? The old woman was also petrified. A single finger was enough to block her full-powered punch? Even a half-ninth heaven realm cultivator wouldn't be able to do that. Not to mention a false god. Everyone was silent as they stared at the young man's finger. Was there something strange about that finger? However, no matter how hard they looked, they couldn't find anything. It was just an ordinary finger with flesh and blood. But how could it block the old woman's fist? Was he hiding his cultivation level? Was his real cultivation level stronger than the old woman's? But looking at this young man's appearance, he didn't seem very old. Moreover, even if his cultivation level was stronger than the old woman's, the old woman had the dragons behind her. Wasn't he afraid of the dragon's revenge? Impressive, Qin Feiyang mumbled. This person was indeed hiding his strength. Is this real? I don't believe it. The white-robed old woman regained her senses, and she couldn't help but fly into a rage out of humiliation. She retracted her fist, and her divine energy surged out as she threw another punch at the young man. Her eyes were full of killing intent. Don't be impulsive. The young man shook his head, but the old woman didn't listen to him. Impulsiveness is the devil. The young man sighed. It was still just a finger. Boom. Their fists and fingers met once again. The result was the same as before. The young man easily blocked the old woman's punch with just a finger. What's going on? I've already used my divine power, but I still can't hurt him. Is he really just a false god? Also, I don't know if you noticed, but he didn't even use his divine power. Just like before, it was just an ordinary finger. This person is not simple. His real cultivation level has probably surpassed the half-ninth heaven realm. Everyone was shocked to the extreme. Suddenly, the young man yawned and shook his head. How boring. This attitude, this tone. He was completely looking down on the white-robed old woman. Bastard, I'm going to kill you. The old woman was furious and was about to retract her fist. You? No. The young man shook his head, and a terrifying force suddenly surged out of his fingertip. The old woman's fist and arm were shattered. His entire body was sent flying. So strong? Everyone's mouth. Just the strength of a finger was enough to shatter the old woman's arm? Bang! The white-robed old woman fell to the ground in a sorry state, spitting out a mouthful of blood. Her eyes were filled her. This kid's strength was definitely above the initial stage of the nine heavens realm. I told you not to be rash. Why didn't you listen? The young man walked up to the old woman step by step. His body, which could not be considered very strong, was now like an unreachable mountain, imperceptibly emitting a powerful pressure. Not only were the people around panicking, but the old woman herself was also panicking. Suddenly, the young man grabbed the old woman and lifted her up. Then, he raised his hand and slapped the old woman's face. Do you know why I hit you? The young man asked. The old woman was stunned. Because you have a foul mouth. You keep calling me a bastard and a bastard. I really don't understand. Who gave you the courage to scold me like that? I've counted for you. You've called me a bastard and a bastard 4 times. I'll give you a discount. 10 slaps for 1 sentence. 40 slaps for 4. After saying that, the young man raised his arm and slapped the old woman's face. How dare you? The old woman was furious and activated her divine art. But then, she was shocked to find that a strange force emerged from the young man's hand and entered her body. Immediately, she felt that the divine power in her body was imprisoned, and she could not use it. What's going on? The old woman panicked. Her divine power was imprisoned. No matter how strong her divine art was, it was useless. Slap. The young man still had a lazy look. But when he attacked, he was full of strength. As the slap landed, the imprint of a palm immediately appeared on his face. Then, the young man paused. One by one, he continued to greet them. Crisp and resounding slaps rang out incessantly. Damn. He slapped the messenger of the dragons in public. He's going to turn the world upside down. This guy, if he's not stupid, he must have a big background. There's no need to guess. Because if he doesn't have a big background, how would he dare to be so presumptuous? But, no matter how big his background is, he shouldn't dare to go against the dragons. It's really puzzling. Everyone was discussing. This person was simply unscrupulous and lawless. So strange, Qin Feiyang was also muttering. What's strange? The big black wolf was suspicious. Why didn't the old woman use her divine art or activate her battle soul? Qin Feiyang transmitted his voice. The big black wolf said, maybe she was scared silly. How is that possible? At first, she clearly wanted to resist, and I even felt the aura of evolving her divine art. But suddenly she stopped resisting. It's definitely impossible for her to give up resisting. Maybe. Qin Feiyang was deep in thought. The big black wolf said, you mean facing the young man she can't resist? I'm thinking, is her divine art restricted in some way? For example, imprisoned or sealed? Qin Feiyang transmitted his voice. This? The big black wolf looked at the young man in surprise. If that was the case, then the young man's cultivation might be stronger than everyone had guessed. Slap. As the last slap landed, the young man let go of the old woman and waved his hand, saying unhappily, my hand is sore. Your skin is too thick. Everyone was speechless. After slapping her dozens of times, he still blamed her for being thick-skinned? How could there be such a person? Wasn't this a classic case of taking advantage of others and pretending to be innocent? Then, they looked at the old woman. Her face was torn and swollen like a pig's head. When she heard the young man's words, she instantly forgot about the pain and glared at the young man furiously, her eyes flashing with intense killing intent. The young man waved his arm and said indifferently, still want to be tortured? A hint of panic flashed in the old woman's eyes. What kind of monster was this? Until now, she still could not see through his true cultivation. It was like a vast ocean unfathomable. Remember, keep a low profile in the future. You should care about what you should care about, but don't care about what you shouldn't care about. Don't think that no one will dare to deal with you just because you have dragons behind you. If I want to kill you, I only need to move my fingers. I'm warning you one last time. Don't be noisy and disturb my sleep. After saying that indifferently, the young man turned and walked to Qin Feiyang's side. He ignored the man and wolf and fell to the ground, resting his head on his hands and closing his eyes to take a nap. Qin Feiyang and the big black wolf exchanged glances. Why was he lying on the ground so casually? At the very least, there were so many people watching. He should focus on his image. The old woman seemed to be truly afraid as she glared at the young man silently with resentment in her eyes. Are you all right? The other messengers walked to the old woman one after another and looked at her with concern. Why didn't I see you guys helping earlier on? Why are you acting all hypocritical now? The old woman was furious. The messengers felt awkward when they heard that. In fact, they wanted to help as well. However, the young man's strength was way too strange, and they were not confident. Therefore, they chose to watch from the sidelines. Don't be angry. Let him be arrogant for now. When Lord Longchong arrives, it'll be his death. Two messengers sent voice transmissions. The old woman glanced at the two of them and looked at the young man again with a cold sneer in her eyes. Next, the plane slowly quieted down. Everyone seemed to be afraid of provoking the young man and deliberately lowered their voices. The people from Blackrock City also didn't stand with Qin Feiyang anymore. Although the young man had the upper hand before, as long as one was not a fool, they would know that the old woman would definitely not let it go. When the experts from the Dragon God Palace arrived, the old woman would definitely make things difficult for them. If they were too close to Qin Feiyang and the young man now, they would definitely be implicated. Therefore, staying away from these two people was the wisest choice. In this regard, Qin Feiyang also had an indifferent attitude, because he did not have a good impression of these people. Besides, a group of villains who changed their rudder according to the wind was not worth his effort. However, this mysterious young man made him very concerned. On the one hand, he wanted to participate in the Dragon God Palace's assessment. On the other hand, he wanted to fight with the messengers of the dragons. Wasn't this too contradictory? Could it be that he was also like him and entered the Dragon God Palace with some purpose? In this person's cultivation level, he had been unable to determine it. This was the first time he had encountered such a situation. The big black wolf said, "Big brother, why don't I go and find out his background?" "Don't go. Be careful not to overreach yourself. Qin Feiyang hurriedly stopped him. Before figuring out a person's character, one must not rashly go and find out his background. Because if the method was not appropriate, it would only arouse the other party's disgust. Next, more batches of people arrived one after another. Qin Feiyang carefully observed that there were only about 100 people in each camp. At most, there would not be more than 200. On average, there were about 150 people in each camp. He remembered that Fan Yunzhang once said that there were 1,200 cities of various sizes in the northern part of the Divine Land. Every city was in charge of a region. In other words, if they all came, the number of people participating in the assessment would probably be close to 200,000. However, what exactly was the content of the assessment? These 100 to 200,000 people had different cultivation levels. There were war gods, monarchs, supreme gods, and a few nine heavens realm experts. If they were all tested together, it would definitely be unfair. Should he find someone to ask? But when he looked at the crowd around him, he decisively gave up this idea. That was because everyone was looking at him with a respectful attitude. Obviously, these people were afraid of being implicated. I hope it's not too difficult. Difficult? Qin Feiyang was not afraid. He was afraid that he would fall into a situation where he had no choice but to expose his identity. Chapter 24:14. Time passed bit by bit. Noon arrived. At this time no one else came. Qin Feiyang carefully counted. There were exactly 1,200 camps. The exact number should be around 180,000 to 190,000. Swish! Suddenly, a burly man descended on the plains. He was more than 2 meters tall and had a strong body, like a small giant. As soon as this person appeared, a terrifying oppressive aura swept out in all directions. Everyone present, including the emissaries, all knelt down and kowtowed. In the entire plains, only Qin Feiyang, the big black wolf, and the young man beside him did not kneel. Qin Feiyang and the big black wolf were a little better. At least they still raised their heads and looked at the burly man. But the young man was still the same as before, quietly lying on the ground with his eyes closed. Not far away, the old woman in the white robe looked at the two of them and the beast, and the sneer in her eyes became even stronger. Continue to be arrogant. You will have a good fruit to eat later. The burly man scanned the crowd, and seeing everyone's respectful attitude, he nodded his head in satisfaction. But just as he was about to speak, he suddenly noticed Qin Feiyang, the big black wolf, and the young man. Immediately, the burly man raised his thick eyebrows, and a hint of displeasure flashed in his eyes, and said expressionlessly, "Tell me your names." "Libur, this is Junior's partner, the big wolf dog," Qin Feiyang said. The burly man looked at the young man again. The young man seemed to be asleep, and did not react at all. Who are they? Seeing the great figure of the Dragon God Palace, they still dare to be so arrogant. You don't know later, but these two people can no longer be described as arrogant. The person lying on the ground even dares to beat up the emissary of the dragons. No way. Beating up the emissary of the dragons, is he not afraid of death? Everyone discussed in a low voice. Cough cough. Qin Feiyang coughed dryly, walked to the side of the young man, patted his shoulder and said, "Brother, get up." The young man opened his hazy eyes and asked suspiciously, "Has the assessment begun?" "Yes." Qin Feiyang nodded. "So fast. I still want to sleep a little longer." The young man grumbled as he stood up and stretched. He glanced at the surroundings before looking at the burly man in the sky and said, "Then let's start quickly. Don't waste time." He is indeed arrogant. That look in his eyes shows that he doesn't take Lord Longchong seriously at all. People murmured. The burly man's face was also gloomy. What happened? Hasn't the assessment started? The young man was still in a daze. Qin Feiyang was also quite speechless. He pointed to the burly man and reminded him, "Brother, the one above is asking for your name." "Name?" The young man was slightly stunned. He looked up at the burly man and asked, "Is the name important? Do I have to report my name to enter the Dragon God Palace?" Hearing this, everyone rolled their eyes. Was he really stupid? Or was he pretending to be stupid? No matter where he went, the first step was to report his name. The burly man was also somewhat astonished. What kind of person was this? The white-robed old woman suddenly said, Lord Long Chong, he is deliberately teasing you. Teasing me? Long Chong looked at the white-robed old woman. That's right. This person is extremely arrogant. Not only did he openly look down on us dragons, but he also slapped me dozens of times in public. Lord, you must uphold justice for me. The white-robed old woman knelt on the ground and said, looking down on dragons. Long Chang's eyes immediately darkened. Lord, we saw this with our own eyes. It's absolutely true. Moreover, he hasn't been selected by any emissary. Another group of emissaries also said, not selected. Long Chong was stunned and frowned. Isn't that trespassing? It is trespassing. The most outrageous thing is that Li Buer actually represented the emissary of Blackrock City and allowed this person to join the Blackrock City. A few more emissaries said, represented the emissary? Long Chong was stunned again and hurriedly said, wait, let's talk about it properly. The white-robed old woman and the other emissaries immediately started talking at once. In some places, they did not forget to add fuel to the fire. Although many people present knew that they were adding fuel to the fire, no one stood out to expose them. Qin Feiyang and the big black wolf were too lazy to explain. As for the young man, he did not care and kept yawning, looking listless and sleepy. So that's how it is. After hearing that, Long Chong came to a sudden realization. Following that, a trace of anger crawled onto his face. He looked at Qin Feiyang and shouted, who gave you the courage to act on your own and have him join your Blackstone City? Qin Feiyang was helpless. He had always wanted to avoid these troubles, but in the end, trouble still came to him. Just as Qin Feiyang was about to speak, the young man beat him to it and said, it has nothing to do with him. I forced him to do this. If you're unhappy, you can come at me. How dare you? Who do you think you are? How dare you speak to me like this? Kneel down before me. Long Chong was furious, and a terrifying aura rushed towards the young man like a torrent. This aura, Qin Feiyang's eyes widened. The big black wolf was in a panic too. The aura did not cause any pressure to the young man. He slowly raised his head and nodded. Greater success stage of the 9 heavens realm. Not bad. What? He can still speak so calmly? The old white-robed woman and the other envoys were dumbfounded. The others were astounded too. Even Long Chong was in disbelief. Even the aura of the greater success stage of the 9 heavens realm could not suppress the young man. Could it be that he was also in the greater success stage of the 9 heavens realm? Don't be so childish. Is the trial starting or not? If not, I'll go take a nap. The young man said with sleepy eyes. Long Chong said in a deep voice, you have not been selected. Thus you are not qualified to take part in the trial. Please leave at once. The young man frowned and asked, must I be selected? Yes. Long Chong nodded. The young man said, can't we discuss it? No. Long Chong shook his head. Sigh. The young man shook his head and sighed. He then appeared in front of Long Chong and said, I'll ask again. Can't we discuss it? So fast. Qin Feiyang was shocked. The young man was right beside him, but he did not notice at all. How did the young man appear in front of Long Chong? At the same time, Long Chong was also shocked. He instinctively took a few steps back and looked at the young man in surprise. Stop talking, this is the rule. His attitude was firm. Rules? The young man muttered and suddenly laughed. Rules are meant to be broken. As he spoke, he approached Long Chong like a ghost and raised his arm to grab Long Chang's neck. Too fast. I can't keep up with his speed at all. The big black wolf exclaimed. The old white-robed woman and the other envoys were also shocked. Firstly, it was because of the young man's speed. Secondly, it was because of the young man's methods and courage. Many people here did not know Long Chang's identity, but as envoys they were quite clear. Not only was he one of the dragons, but he was also the hall master of the law enforcement hall of the Dragon God Palace. In other words, Long Chong controlled the life and death of everyone in the Dragon God Palace. As long as he said a word, No one would resist. But this person did not hesitate to attack. And from the looks of it, Long Chong was not his match. You're courting death. Long Chong was completely enraged, and his divine power surged out. But in the next moment, his expression froze. And then his face was full of disbelief. Because he also felt a strange power coming from the young man's hand and entering his body. And his divine power was immediately imprisoned. Tell me who's courting death? The young man looked at Long Chong listlessly. Who are you? Long Chong was surprised. You dare to open your mouth and ask without my permission? The young man's fingers exerted a little force, and Long Chang's throat began to shatter, and strands of dragon blood spurted out. This guy is crazy. He actually injured Lord Long Chong. The group of people turned pale with shock. No matter who you are, no matter what your identity is, you'd better let go of me immediately, or you will face the wrath of my dragons. Long Chong shouted sternly, but in fact he was also frightened. He did not expect that the recruitment this time would actually attract such a terrifying guy. The wrath of the dragons. The young man was stunned and said indifferently, Then do you want to taste my wrath? Long Chong was furious. But before he could say anything, the young man's 5 fingers suddenly exerted force, and Long Chang's neck broke on the spot, and his head fell. Immediately after, the young man pointed at Long Chang's body again. Accompanied by a loud bang, Long Chang's body also instantly shattered, turning into a bloody mist that dyed the sky. What? This is too terrifying. This is an instant kill. A greater completion 9 heavens realm actually did not have the power to fight back in his hands. The people present and the various emissaries all trembled in body and mind. Qin Feiyang and the big black wolf were also shocked. This young man's strength was simply heaven-defying. Look, what else does he want to do? Could it be that he still wants to erase Lord Long Chang's soul? Someone suddenly exclaimed. Everyone came back to their senses and hurriedly looked at the young man, only to see that the young man had already raised his hand and pointed at Long Chang's head. What was this if not erasing Long Chang's soul? Long Chong also panicked completely, his soul escaping from the top of his head without hesitation. The young man's finger landed, and his head also shattered with a sound. Long Chang's scalp could not help tingling. If his soul did not escape, it would definitely have been shattered together with his head by now. This person was really not afraid of them, the dragons. Otherwise, he would not have tried to kill him in front of so many people. This is the fury of this young master. Can you answer this young master now? Who is the one courting death? The young man lowered his arm and looked at Long Chang's soul indifferently. To be precise, it was the dragon soul. Long Chong looked at the young man, his heart filled with a fear that could not be dissipated. This person still had a listless appearance, indicating that he was not serious yet. If he was so strong without being serious, then how terrifying would he be after being serious? At the thought of this, he could not help but feel his hair stand on end. Where did this person come from? Still not answering, the young man frowned with a displeased expression. Long Chong shuddered and hurriedly said, It's me. I'm the one courting death, please calm down. Even his tone became respectful. Chapter 24:15. Lord Long Chong has given in? Is that called giving in? That's clearly lowly. Looks like that person's strength has already reached the point where even Lord Long Chong is in despair. Everyone muttered, their eyes filled with fear towards the young man. The big black wolf chuckled. Big brother, looks like we've found a thigh. You're thinking too simply. Long Chong might be very strong in the Dragon God Palace, but in the entire dragons, he's just a small character. This person has caused such a big ruckus. Do you think that after the dragons find out about this, they will sit back and do nothing? Qin Feiyang thought. That's right. The big black wolf slapped his head and said, From what you said, this person is actually a problem. He's a problem to begin with. If we want to keep a low profile, then he wants to keep a high profile. It's completely different. Qin Feiyang said. You're keeping a low profile? The big black wolf rolled his eyes. He really couldn't see how he was keeping a low profile. If not for the appearance of this young man, Qin Feiyang would definitely be the most eye-catching person. However, the appearance of this young man helped Qin Feiyang divert everyone's attention. In the end, he still helped them. High up in the sky, the young man smiled faintly, looked at Long Chang's dragon soul, and said, "That's more like it. Then does this young master have the qualifications to participate in the Dragon God Palace's examination now? Of course, you don't even need to take the examination anymore. I can now announce that you have officially joined the Dragon God Palace." Long Chang laughed, full of flattery. "Isn't this just going through the back door? This young master doesn't like people talking behind my back. It's better to participate in the examination openly." The young man said. "As long as you're happy." Long Chang nodded his head. The young man asked, "Then when is the examination?" "Right away," Long Chang said. "All right then." The young man nodded his head, patted his mouth, and yawned a few times before landing beside Qin Feiyang and the big black wolf. "Brother, you're amazing." The big black wolf immediately went up and laughed. "It's nothing." The young man waved his hand, and then he raised his head to look at Long Chang and said, "As a member of Dark Rock City, I won't allow anyone to bully my companions." Companions? Qin Feiyang's mouth twitched. This person was born to be familiar with others. Don't worry. As long as it is a person from Blackstone City, I will take special care of them." Long Chang smiled obsequiously. "Does that include us?" The 100 or so people from Blackrock City were stunned for a moment before a trace of joy crept onto their faces. He didn't expect to be able to get such a bargain. It was really an unexpected surprise. The young man glanced at those people and looked at Long Chang. He pointed at Qin Feiyang and the big black wolf and said, "I'm talking about them. The others have nothing to do with me." Long Chang was slightly taken aback and nodded. Understood. When the hundreds of people from Blackrock City heard this, they felt as if they had fallen from heaven to hell. In their hearts, they were filled with regret. If they had known earlier, they wouldn't have fallen out with this man and dog, even if they were beaten to death. Haha. The big black wolf was stunned for a moment, then looked at those people and laughed gloatingly. This was the price of not being loyal. Although they didn't know what would happen in the future, at the moment, if these people weren't so petty before, then under the pressure of the young man, they would definitely be able to successfully enter the Dragon God Palace. As for now, not only did they lose the qualification for special care, Long Chang might even make things difficult for them in order to curry favor with the young man. This was reaping what they sowed. Facing the big black wolf's ridicule, they were also dissatisfied. What was there to be proud of? Did they think that Long Chang was really afraid? He was just temporarily compromising. Once this matter was over, when the experts of the dragons arrived, it would be the time of your death. Boom! Suddenly, a series of rumbling sounds rang out. The entire plane began to tremble. What happened? Everyone looked at the plane in shock. Only Long Chang and the group of envoys looked very calm. Qin Feiyang and the big black wolf also looked at the plane suspiciously. Clang! Soon, a few more earth-shattering sounds rang out. In the center of the plane, the ground began to crack, and a vast aura rolled out. Everyone retreated in horror. In just a few moments, 4 ancient stone doors broke out of the ground and stood on the ground. They were all more than 10 meters tall and were completely black, exuding a magnificent aura. But the 4 stone doors were tightly shut. "Open!" Long Chang roared. The stone doors immediately opened slowly, revealing a dark passage. "This is the place of the assessment. It's indeed magical," someone whispered. "The place of the assessment?" Qin Feiyang looked at the 4 stone doors suspiciously. These stone doors gave him a feeling that was very similar to the doors of the God's miracle. Could it be that the place of the assessment was not in the divine land, but on another continent? From left to right, gods of war enter the first stone door. Divine lords enter the second stone door. Gods of war enter the third stone door. 9 heavens realm enter the 4th stone door. If you can come out alive in 3 days, you will pass the assessment. Long Chang said loudly. Come out alive? Is this place dangerous? Isn't that nonsense? How can it be called a place without danger? I'm not afraid to tell you that I've heard that these 4 places are all dangerous. So dangerous? Then I'd better not go. It's too late to regret it now. If you back out, the messenger who brought you here will feel very embarrassed and kill you on the spot. Isn't this forcing me to die? But no one forced you to participate in the assessment back then, right? You were the one who wanted to come. Some people began to back out. Some were full of ambition. By the way, one more thing. Although there are risks in the assessment place, there are also great opportunities hidden. For example, divine artifacts, divine arts, pills, and other treasures. Longchang said again. Someone asked, are there legendary divine artifacts and divine arts? Yes. As long as you are lucky, you can get them. Longchang said. Hearing that there were even legendary divine artifacts and divine arts in the assessment place, those who were timid began to be eager to give it a try. They didn't need too many. As long as they could get 1 or 2, they would be able to make a meteoric rise. Longchang glanced at everyone, then looked at the young man and said with a flattering smile, You Li Bu and the big wolf dog will go to the Wargats assessment place. What? Everyone was dumbfounded. This kind of care, isn't it a little too blatant? Li Bu was a low-level war god, and should enter the Wargats assessment place. But the big wolf dog was a half-step god, and that young man was even stronger. Even Longchang himself was no match for him. If they were to go to the Wargats assessment place, how would the others survive? Not to mention going to the assessment place to search for treasures. Even if they were lucky enough to find treasures, it wouldn't be their turn. Because as long as the young man stretched out his hand, they would have to obediently hand it over. In short, letting the big wolf dog and the young man go to the Wargats assessment place was like dominating the place. The young man glanced at the first stone door and said to Longchang, You really know how to take care of people. But this young master is not interested in that kind of low-level place. Longchang was stunned. He still didn't buy it. Let's go. The young man glanced at Qin Feiyang and the big black wolf, then walked straight to the 4th stone door. Why did you call us? The big black wolf was stunned. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed, and said with a smile. Then let's go. Since it has already come to this situation, it's safer to follow him. Alright, you have the final say. The big black wolf nodded. Indeed. This time, they had offended the old woman in the white robe. Perhaps this old, which would tamper with the assessment place. Of course, it also believed that with Qin Feiyang's trump card, he would be able to easily deal with it. But now, in order to hide his identity, Qin Feiyang didn't dare to use these trump cards easily, so following the young man was the best choice. If he didn't want a free shield, he would be a fool. Walking in front of the stone door, Qin Feiyang and the big black wolf didn't stop at all. They directly followed the young man and stepped into the stone door. At that moment, the 2 men and 1 beast disappeared from everyone's sight. Longchang looked at the stone door, and a bone-piercing cold light flashed across his eyes. Following closely, he retracted his gaze and looked at the people on the plain, shouting, Those who are half a step into the 9th heaven realm and above stay here first. As for the rest, you have 10 breaths to enter the assessment door. Otherwise you will be killed without mercy. Hearing this, the people on the plain immediately turned into 3 torrents and rushed towards the 3 stone doors. You're courting death. Suddenly, Longchang roared. A wisp of divine sense flew out and struck a burly man who was about to enter the first stone door. This person was a great success divine lord, but he wanted to take advantage of the chaos to enter the assessment place of the war god. Because in the assessment place of the war god, with his great success divine lord cultivation, he would definitely be able to pass easily. However, he couldn't escape Longchang's eyes and was directly killed by Longchang. Originally, there were many people who had the same idea as that person, but when they saw that person being mercilessly killed, they immediately became obedient. In less than 10 breaths, the entire plain became empty. Other than the 1,000 or so dragon's messengers who led the team, there were only 5 middle-aged men and women and 2 old men left. They were the 9th heaven realm experts who had come to participate in the assessment. Longchang looked at the 7 of them and said, I'll give you a mission. Please instruct us. The 7 of them said respectfully. The killing intent in Long Chang's eyes burst out without any concealment as he said, "Kill Li Bu-er and the others at the assessment place." What? The expressions of the 7 people changed. They didn't expect that they would be given this mission. Not to mention Qin Feiyang and the big black wolf. With their strength of the 9th heaven realm, they could easily deal with them. But that youth, even Long Chang, who was at the 9th heaven realm, was no match for him. So they definitely couldn't. Because the strongest among them was only at the initial 9th heaven realm. Wasn't this sending them to their deaths? They came to the Dragon God Palace only to seek resources. Because when they reached the 9th heaven realm, without a large amount of resources, it was very difficult to improve. They only wanted to cultivate quietly, and didn't want to meddle in other people's business, let alone die. But they didn't dare to disobey Long Chang's orders. Because if they didn't listen, they would definitely be hated by Long Chang. He might even attack them right now. Although Long Chang's physical body was shattered, his 9th heaven realm dragon soul was enough to kill them. And most importantly, Long Chang had dragons behind him. No matter how bold they were, they didn't dare to go against the dragons. Although your cultivation is not bad, you are nothing in front of us dragons. It's best if you know what's good for you. The white-robed old woman looked at the 7 people's troubled faces and smiled sinisterly. The 7 people's eyes trembled. The threat was already very obvious. Long Chang coughed and looked at the white-robed old woman. You should have a better attitude when asking for help. Yes, yes, yes. The white-robed old woman hurriedly nodded. But her eyes were full of coldness as she looked at the 7 people. The other envoys also had bad intentions. How about this? As long as you can kill them, you can take any resources in the Dragon God Palace in the future. Also, your cultivation is so strong, I can let you enter the law enforcement hall. Long Chang said temptingly. The 7 people looked at each other and asked Long Chang, including soul stones? Of course. Long Chang nodded. Okay. We will definitely kill them. The 7 people couldn't resist the temptation in the end. They nodded heavily and walked towards the 4th stone door. Long Chang, the white-robed old woman, and the other envoys looked at the backs of the 7 people with a trace of mockery in their eyes. Humans were so easy to use. Just give them some benefits, and they were as obedient as dogs. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.